Hello everyone and welcome to episode 8 of the LightBringers podcast. I said that confidently, even though I'm not sure if it's episode 8. I'm pretty sure I've been right every single time. I'm never wrong and life is good and awesomely fantastic. And I'm going to get onto the right page and we're going to talk to some amazing people because we're doing a podcast as per usual. Huzzah, hopefully this is working. Let me just quickly make sure. Oh yeah, there you go. Excellent. And the music fades down a bit. That's very nicely done, Jebro. Well done. Have I put everyone's name right? Pretty sure I have. Fornax is back.
Yes.
Yes. Ruka is here and back.
Hello.
Proof
I missed you all last week.
Yeah, we missed you as well.
We missed you so much.
We
My
missed you as
heart
well.
goes out to you.
Well, now they're here now. You can still go out. I can still go out, I guess, if you wanted to.
I mean, Bruce's heart can always go out to me. Oh gosh, no.
That
not
doesn't sound like you're going.
You want me to
you're-
take it out, right?
Doesn't sound like the heart's coming out of you. It sounds like something else.
Jebro! Oh my gosh, get it together.
Burping. I'm talking about burping.
Oh, if you want to hear me burp,
No.
I can burp.
I would love to hear Kroof burp for the
I
next
burp
3 hours.
a lot.
Have you seen the stop? Okay, Rook, get ready. Get ready for Fornax's amazing
Oh, yes.
avatar shenanigans. Can you wave to us?
Yes, I can.
Oh.
Hello.
I have been seeing the avatar this whole time, Jebro, for the like 40 minutes.
you
and I
haven't
got
seen-
distracted
You
talking
haven't
about
seen it yet.
anything
You haven't
yet.
seen anything yet. There are many actions. There are many hand actions as well that look like other things. Don't say.
Please, everyone temper your expectations, okay?
No.
No, let's raise them up.
There's
Let's
the
raise
anger
roof.
face. There's loads of stuff.
Alright, sure.
There you go.
Alright. No, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this
You
podcast
just looked down
today.
just as Cryonera got angry, but hopefully they'll get angry later.
I'm a proud girl. I rigged this bitch myself, so I'm very happy.
Hey.
There we go. That's it. How is everyone in chat? I hope we're also good. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. That's not bad. I haven't had one today. It's our first coffee of the day, you know. I hope everyone is well. We're on twitch.tv/JebroUnity for the 8th episode of LightBringers podcast. This month is Mental Health Awareness Month. If you put it in Twitter and the internet and do hashtag Mental Health Awareness Month, you're going to find out about loads of stuff. The reason why it's a month of it is because, well, we should be aware of it every day of the year and our life and minute of the day and all the time from to the past. Back in the day, you know, when all the things,
smooth.
Big Bang, they should have been there.
Before
Mental Health
existence.
Awareness Month. Yes.
Mental Health Awareness Month. Yeah,
Exactly.
I agree.
Love Dr.
Mental Health
Strange.
Awareness. Mental Health Awareness Month predates all of us and will outlive all of us. It will be the
Sure.
first and last thing ever conceived of in the universe. So I'm just glad that we could celebrate it right here, right now, in this point of time together. You know,
Yeah.
just all be here.
It will be remembered. That's true. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Emphasize my point even better. Should just let you do it. Should have just done it. Should have just said that earlier.
Sure. I'll get a bald cap, Jebro, and then I'll become Jebro.
You've got
Don't
the
worry
accent
about it.
down. It's just don't do the whole
I
old
do have
lady
the
thing.
accent down perfectly. Thank you so much. Yeah.
What? What?
I'm gonna. This is how you sound.
What?
That's
is
how
a
you sound,
Charlie
Jebro.
Chaplin?
Sound like I'm flipping,
What?
I don't know, wheeling and dealing, like flipping.
So, Jebro,
What?
Unity.
Actually,
Mary
maybe.
Poppins. I know that shoe you wear anywhere.
Okay, if I still sound like that, that's okay. That's kind of how I
Let's
sound.
talk about Mental Health Month.
Yeah,
do it.
the THs they're dead on, actually.
Please, yeah. Whilst taking the piss out of the two Brits in chat, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, but like I think who was it recently? Someone said I could tell where Jebro is from in London because of how he said his THs or something. Someone said, and I was like, what? And they were like, they got it. They were like East London, like North East London. I was like, what? How? And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that whole thing. That's a
I
thing.
really love the way that Reader Geek has typed it out. Mental Health Month. in
Yeah,
chat.
well, I mean,
I really
Really
love
Geek
it.
knows
It's
me
been-
very well, unfortunately. So like, yeah. Oh dear. Actually, the whole stream we hear that mostly for a long time every day. month. Yeah. Although that's more northern, I guess. Anyway. I don't say the like it's more like a U, like an like a month, not a month. Month is more like northern, isn't it? For next.
Month.
Or a U, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know where you're from, and you don't have to reveal that.
Cumbria. I'm a Cumbrian.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not. I'm from the lakes, from the north.
Oh, so you're fairly posh. Okay.
What?
You got like wood potatoes.
Where
Posh.
The town I'm from, everything is Luke and Book and Kook and that kind of deep northern stuff. Yeah. And if I talk to someone from my hometown, I can slip back into that a little bit. But I've lived everywhere. I've lived quite in a number of countries and a number of places up and down the UK, so it's kind of flattened out my accent.
Yeah.
So.
And now you're just posh. He's got posh accent now.
I have a thing for that. There you go. That's for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, there you go.
Nice. There it is.
Perfect. Can't be
I
rude.
would put a whole podcast of just the two of you talking about different dialects from Britain and the UK. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds
and I
good.
will just be like the passive viewers. We're getting
And
a
you
lot
two,
of
and you two
information
can
here.
just act them out as well. You can just
Yeah,
like
Kroof and I will do them, and I believe, Kroof, you'll probably do a better job than I will, and I'll be laughing too hard to
No.
even really do a good job, so I think this will work great. I think this will work great, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about good compliments coming from B. You're very, very good at the things. So take that, put that in your pipe and smoke it. If you smoke a pipe. You don't have to smoke a pipe, that's okay. Not on the podcast. I'm going to talk about mental health today. So it is Mental Health Awareness Month, and on the serious note, even though we today may get a little bit heavy for a lot of people, if you are in chat and we're talking about anything that feels sensitive or it feels triggering or it feels as if it's going to bring up some stuff for you that you may not be ready or thinking about talking about, or you're not comfy, just exit, go, leave. It's okay, and come back when you want. It's okay. Take care of yourself. That is important. Same if you're listening anywhere, watching anywhere. That's okay. We're going to be talking about mental health ethically. I am a trained mental health counselor. I am going to be going for my license and everything else. So there's definitely people here as well who are massive advocates and have a lot of experience, have done some kind of, work around it, and or just have a lot of insight to offer, and that's important and enough as well. So it's very, very good to have people here. I appreciate their vulnerability today as well. 3 of you coming on to talk about this stuff is not easy, especially if in front of people, millions and millions of people that will be listening to this podcast, of course. So yeah, it's gonna have some Guild Wars 2 in it, but we have Guild Wars 2 community members, and I thought it would be a good time to talk about mental health since it is this month. And yes, can we do an intro? We'll do a quick intro. Kroof, tell us what you do, where you do it. Hello.
Hello everyone, I'm Kroof. I do a lot of YouTube stuff where you can find me at Kroof. Guild Wars 2 videos, other MMO videos, pop culture news stuff maybe, but mostly Guild Wars 2.
Is that when you scream on Instagram?
Do I scream on Instagram?
No.
I was like, I mean, when I last did that. I also have an Instagram where I post some stories. I might post them more to YouTube, but I also do Twitch throughout the week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and the weekends are getting a little bit more wishy-washy. It's kind of just when I'm available. So thank you for having me on.
I like that you said Kroof screaming on TikTok as though that is not something that would happen, when very recently we did witness Kroof doing interpretive nose flaring on Twitch. So like, I think that both of those are completely within the realm of possibility and or have happened in Kroof content creation. So,
and I didn't even mention my TikTok, but I do have a TikTok, and that's a little bit more fun. So if you want to go find me over on TikTok, you've been warned.
Cool. Do it. Rookery. Tell us about yourself, where you do it, all the things.
yes. Hello, it's me, Rook. I don't do yet interpretive nose flaring, but I am considering it. But otherwise, you can find me playing MMOs, usually 2 to 3 days a week on my own channel. Final Fantasy 14 or Guild Wars 2 are my big ones, although I've dabbled in a lot and play others on the side. And then 2 days a week I'm on podcasts, so the LightBringers on Fridays, and then 808 Radio, which is Gamer Escape's 14 podcast on Saturdays. And recently I've also had the pleasure of getting to do a lot of shoutcasting, which I was not expecting, but I have fallen in love with. So if I'm not live on my channel, if I'm not live on the podcast, it's very likely that you will see me casting stuff. We just finished up World's First for Final Fantasy 14's Ultimate, a lot more PvP stuff in the future for 14. And hey, I mean, I'm just thinking we need to get some good shoutcasting with Guild Wars 2 happening again, because I need to like round this schedule out. So if anybody wants to coordinate these events or you want me to shoutcast, you just hit me up. But you can find me on Twitch at Rookery, on YouTube at Rookery, where I try to get at least one video up per week. And then around the internet, ROOKURI. Twitter, it has an underscore after it though, so.
You could do a monthly tournament, that's true.
Oh yeah. I watched your raid coverage of Final Fantasy 14. I had no idea what was going on, but it was really good and fun.
My God, that fight is absolutely buck wild. So I don't blame you for not knowing what was going on, because most of the teams didn't even know. We were all figuring it out together. This latest fight was, I think, one of the most complex and longest endgame PvE pieces of content I've seen in like current MMOs. So yeah, that was pretty wild. It was definitely worth checking out, but we need to get some Guild Wars 2 stuff going.
Could do a Triacast monthly automated tournament. There you go.
I'm saying, I think it'd be great. Also, we have Lithy here in the chat, who is also part of that ultimate casting. Hey, Lithy. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been really cool. I've been actually really loving getting into it. So yeah, keep an eye out. Usually I post on Discord and other places what's happening when, because I'm doing a lot of stuff in a lot of places. So
collaborating like an absolute beast. That's good. That's what it's about. And the Crichton Herald. Hello, Fornax. How are you doing today?
Hi.
Tell us all the things.
Hi. That is not the hand gesture you said it was last time. It is a wave. Let's just prove it.
Yeah, okay.
That is not
sure.
We're not advocating for prostate health. We're not. No.
We do advocate
Hi.
for prostate health. This is the sponsor of the stream.
Care for your prostate. You'll miss it when it's gone. No.
Yeah,
Hello. Go on.
No, you're introing yourself. This is your time to talk. During the entire podcast, this is the best time for you to talk right now.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I'm Fornax. My channel is the Crichton Herald. I make content for Guild Wars 2. I do make content for other games, but I have been having an off period at the moment because I've had poor mental health. So nice segue into the chat today.
Yay! Not good. Well, we're going to be talking about that. We can talk about all the things. I have some questions. We went through some questions. I was doing this till like 2 a.m. last night. This morning, I was thinking, I don't know what to do the podcast on. I was like, I want to do mental health, but also I want to do this, that, the other this month. And I was like, okay. But I was thinking about initially, like, why we play games. And I was reading some articles, and I do loads of research on this myself because I'm starting to bring gaming into my counseling. And I was like, okay, is it ethical to play video games with kids? Because, you know, sometimes a lot of kids play video games all the time, and there is a point where video games are good for lowering stress levels. They're very good for keeping us calm as well and bringing those emotions down a bit. But if you do that over a long period of time, and you do that a lot, you're not able to feel the feels, right? And we got to feel the feels to move through the feels. I'm putting this in really basic language because I'm just being careful. So over time, if you just play video games as a coping mechanism, ultimately, it's not going to be enough. And you might put yourself into a bit of a place. I think most of us know this. Like, addiction is related specifically to addiction normally as well, in terms of alcoholism, drugs, and everything else. Anything you can get addicted to, including video games, is the main point it becomes a problem is when it is interfering with your normal life function and you're not able to live your life in a normal way, I would say. But it is basically impairing your function. your functionality in life. You're not able to go outside, you can't work, you can't live without basically using this thing. And gaming is a really good, so I know this is going to get deep today, I know. Gaming is really, really good, and it helped me a lot when I was going through my depression when I was younger. And maybe I got to the point where it was a bit too much, but it was okay. But it helped me. So we're going to be talking about that a lot today as well. But I was just wondering from our guests, that's a bit of a weird intro to that, and I did not plan it that way. I don't plan or script anything. You can tell, can't you? How does gaming... To put this question, I've written the question on the document, and I don't like the way I've written it. I've said, like, does gaming help reduce your stress levels? And it's just like, it feels like that is a stupid question because I think it does. But like, how does it for all of you? And I'm just wondering whether or not that makes sense. Like, what is it that helps you reduce your stress levels with games, and what is it maybe that you do in games to help that? Because we don't always play games to release stress. That's not the only reason we play games. We play games to enjoy a story, to be competitive, to explore worlds, to get out of the situation we're in right now. You know, there's loads of reasons we play. So I guess, yeah, what does it do for you? And what does it do for your mental health, I suppose?
Well, in my experience, I feel like it does at times reduce my stress or pressures from the world, while other times it just might be because of where I'm at in my life. It doesn't really do that. That could just be my procrastination side when I'm doing this and I know I should be doing something else, but you still have that voice in the back of your mind saying, you should go do that other thing. It is for me, an easy place to go to visually, audibly escape into a different texture of the world and explore something different. And I tend to gravitate more towards MMOs rather than single player games, because for me, it's not just the game that reduces the stress. It's the interacting with other people that sometimes reduces my stress, to get lost in their own stories and in their personalities and see more people beyond just like my city. So that's what I use games for sometimes.
I like that. That's cool. So it's like you're saying, so it's an escapism, but it's not an escapism from people. It's actually a joining with people to kind of experience what they're experiencing as well.
Yeah. I think there's so many fascinating people, and the internet is a great avenue to find those like-minded people and also those people who don't share your same beliefs, and to see different feelings of the world, but in a good way, not in a negative way, but being introduced to something you didn't think about or that you don't personally experience, and learning from them and hearing from them. So I like the human aspect to games a lot.
Cool. Well said. I like it. And also, we are very, very appreciative that we have met a fascinating person like yourself, Griff.
Thank you.
The reason that I mostly play games is just to like pester Kroof and just be there and just like exist with Kroof. Sometimes you don't even know, but I'm right there, Kroof. I'm just hanging, just watching around the corner. I'm kidding.
I thought I saw someone following me.
That's a different podcast, Rick.
We're gonna need several episodes to dive into this. No, I'm kidding.
That's not this channel.
See, watch me send you a message after the podcast today, like, hey, Kroof, I was just kidding. I want you to know I was just joking about that. But like, I do love you very much, but I don't follow you around in game creepily, I promise. I swear to you.
You could follow me around whenever you want, Rook. But only you.
Oh, thanks. I'll answer your question seriously now, Jebro.
No, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I'm fine. I'm just like, what's happening? I don't know.
That moment of suspense. No, I loved that. I loved that, Kroof. Like, I agree. I think there's something, and especially as we've seen, like, in the last couple years with the pandemic and with other things like that. I mean, even just, like, when I was shifting into adulthood, I guess, I hadn't been able to play MMOs before, mostly because I was sort of, I guess, at the mercy of having a parent that didn't understand video games, didn't care about video games, had no idea what technology was, and oftentimes like disregarded the value of that, right? And so like for me, it was like, you know, there was no way I was ever going to be able to convince my mom to get us a computer that could even run a game. Like the one MMO that I saved money up for, which was Final Fantasy XI, funnily enough, way back when, I got knowing that it probably wouldn't work with our computer, but just hoping that for some reason it would. I don't even think as a kid I knew that I would have to pay a subscription for it, so I really did not think this out, to be honest. But because of that, I mostly did my gaming by myself, like, or like single player games by myself. Like when I would go to my dad's house, like he actually really loved games, so he introduced me to some of my favorite series. And like for most of my life up to adulthood, I primarily played single player games. And I think for me, the reason that they were so liberating was because it allowed me to experience a world in a way that was my own, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, especially when you're younger, regardless of your like parental situation or anything, right? Like, you feel like you don't always have the most agency over who you are, or that like you're really seen for who you are. And games gave me everything from like my first forays into stuff like role playing, which then also helped me realize my own sexuality, to really attractive characters in video games that also helped me realize my own sexuality, to I mean, even just creating characters that felt as though they were a true expression of myself versus like the confines of who I was kind of expected to be it from parents or stuff like that, or, you know, my mom specifically. It allowed me to have like a place where I felt seen and heard and like I had agency. And then as I got older to like adulthood and beyond, when I actually was able to get MMOs myself, I think there was also like a shift in my life where like as a kid I had always felt like the people that I would resonate with the most I just didn't have near me. And eventually like in high school and stuff I found them, but it wasn't until I was old enough to actually have something like an MMO, and many of my friends like post college and all that kind of stuff had spread out across like the US, and you know, being an adult and transitioning into that working life and all of that kind of stuff, like the opportunity to like create those bonds and friendships felt so much harder to come by. So like it was almost like I did a full circle return, except now I actually did have a computer that could play the games and I could play them with people. So yeah, like to go long way around, Kroof, I think that aspect that you brought up as well about connection, or conversely, like the days where I don't feel like I want to be connected to people and I have my own ways that I, you know, feel empowerment and agency within games. I think a lot of times in my life it's helped buoy me like through periods where I felt like I didn't have a lot of control over my own space or life, or I just didn't feel good about myself in the way that like I wanted to be, and how I wanted to be seen, and how I wanted to be acknowledged and heard. And yeah, I mean, yeah, games have gotten me through a lot of hard times. They're also great for just focusing my mind during anxiety times, because, you know, there's like very specific tasks you can accomplish, and that connection with people is so strong. So I definitely do think there are ways that it reduces stress, or, you know, has like helped me in mental health long term.
Yeah, you bring up a good point in terms of anxiety as well. I mean, all of it, obviously, good points. Like, thank you for sharing as well, both of you so far. But like, there is that specific part as well about anxiety, and then it was making me think about ADHD, and it's also making me think about neurodivergent peeps, and how it, like, video games are actually a really, really good tool. There's a good question I've got later, like, what is your inventory like? And there's a lot of people on TikTok as well who talk about integrating video games and mental health together, and how like teaching people how to be humble by playing ranked PvP modes and things like Mortal Kombat and other stuff like that. Teaching people how to manage and be like, and look at how organized you can be in terms of, or managing organization for like ADHD peeps and people with I think there was some stuff to do with OCD I was reading recently as well, but like arranging stuff in a way that, you know, is not necessarily helpful to anyone else, but is very unique to you and your situation and your class that you're playing and everything else. And it was just like, wow, you can really like transfer a lot of these in life situations to games, and like, you know, you can see yourself coming out in the games as well. So it's another way of expressing yourself, like you said, like you both said. And I feel like, you know, with other people as well, you can really gauge what they're like. You know, that person who hasn't got food, when they go into a strike or a raid, you're like, you're like me. Yeah, there's a similarity there. I'm that person. Or runes, like you forgot to put runes on, something like that. You know, there's different ways that we can express ourselves. That's a little bit different, but anyway, I'm just taking the piss out of myself. For next, I'm not sure what the question was now.
Yeah, what was the question again?
In terms of like games reducing stress levels, or even just like how you kind of got into games and what games do for like your mental health and how you kind of connect with them and what they do for you, really. That's a bit of a broad, wide question.
That is a deeply broad. So, I mean, I've gamed for most of my life. The first serious game that I played, outside of Pokemon, of course, was actually World of Warcraft. It was the game that I bought a PC for. We had a PC. I had to have my own. That was it. That was the end of it. And so that's how I got in. And I didn't realize how much. So I am, what did they say, neurodivergent or neuroatypical person. I have aphantasia, which is weird. Look it up. And I was diagnosed when I was 8 years old with ADD. So attention deficit disorder and all sorts of weird stuff. And I'm also dyslexic, so trifecta of crapness here. And when I got into gaming, I realized how much of the social cues that I just did not have a single clue about. I felt like I'd missed the lesson in school where you were took aside and learned how to read other people and like learn how to kind of interact and express yourself in ways that was acceptable to the group almost. And so MMOs were kind of as a person who wasn't particularly a social butterfly, MMOs were kind of an introduction to social behaviors in a safe environment where I could observe and interact, and it made me a better person overall. Just not a better person, better to other people, so that I could communicate with them better rather than being. I guess people saw me as very standoffish.
You saying you were learning how to communicate more effectively? Do you think?
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, it's at school I was very good at communication, and I in terms of conveying an idea or sort of creative writing and that kind of thing, I was always all right at that. But actually, that is a different skill set to having a conversation with another human being, talking about abstractions of aspect and personality and preference and politics and everything else. So for me, at the beginning, when I was able-bodied, MMOs were a social exercise and escapism, and it was also a less complicated, more understandable world. The world we live in is full of stupidity and complexity and irreconcilable activities. You know, funding fossil fuels whilst our planet is burning down, not taxing the holy motherfucking shit out of them to actually fix the problem that they set our world on fire with. This is incomprehensible to me. But when I am and reading that in the news, there are things you can do. You can't be completely defeatist, but you need to have a place of respite. So in terms of what they do for me now, in terms of stress, when I can't no longer deal with that, or when I've exhausted my supply of giving a crap of that, I jump into games to be in an environment where where the world makes sense, where the boundaries of morality are reasonable and understandable and coherent to, you know, reason and rationality, which they aren't in, you know, the mundane world that we live in.
That's actually
Did
true.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean that's enough. There is no right answer. There never is on this podcast. So we can just kind of dip and dive around. It's like dodgeball.
Well, I will say that as a disabled person, and when I was unable to, I was housebound for quite a long time with a severe spinal injury. The gaming worlds that I inhabited took on a different aspect. It was an escapism, a pure escapism. I am stuck in this house, but I'm not stuck here. I can explore the world through the internet. I can explore the world through Google Maps. I can explore the world and different stories through MMOs and RPGs and that kind of thing. And the other thing that I think, from a personal point of view, is gaming is a way of questioning your belief system when held up to abstraction. So if you have like dearly held belief systems and they're rooted in family, or that my parents have always done this, or this is part of my culture, and then when you see that idea in its rawest form, in its sort of primordial state in a game environment, all the bias, the cognitive biases that we wrap around these sort of like ingrained notions of our belief systems get stripped away, especially by science fiction and fantasy, and we can just look at the reality of the situation, and then you can become a better person by being able to analyze yourself and analyze your ideas in an environment where it's non-judgmental.
That's what counseling is. That's literally what counseling is. Like, that's funny that you said that. It is literally like, that is exactly the kind of, and if anyone's ever wanted to know about therapy, or like if you have any questions, I answer those 100%. And actually probably I not that I'm delving into anyone's like personal life, but maybe others can as well. But like, if you are in that space of, it's like people, if people aren't judgmental, you are more inclined to be your authentic, genuine self. This is why Instagram, Twitter, and everything else is such an issue, because people judge you based on all these tiny little things, like your Twitch viewership, or your pictures, or your selfies, or what you're doing, or and it's all very, very fake, and it's all very, very harmful as well. There is good that can come from it as well, I would say. Unfortunately, I think it's more detrimental than anything else, and it's unfortunately something I talk about with clients on a daily basis, and I mean specifically for kids, because they don't have the mentality, they don't have the maturity, they don't have the growth that adults have to potentially deal with that. And I would argue that adults don't either. We're not ready. Yeah. We're not ready for this. We're just not. And we can see the impact it has. But it's like, anyway, I'm rolling off the point a little bit. Although, to be fair, I don't think there is a point.
I loved what you said, Fornax, in terms of using MMOs as almost like an exercise and a teaching tool. And I started playing MMOs around probably when I was 6 or 7, and I credit which was last year.
Last year you were 6, yeah.
But I credit a lot of my understanding or skill in being able to talk to people, being able to listen to people, to MMOs. And I think starting early, you could be unlucky, and I could have had a really bad time with it, but maybe I ended up being lucky and I had a really good time with it. I was able to interact with adults in a way that wasn't them talking to me as if I was a child. So maybe my mindset perhaps, was more mature than perhaps was my actual age. Not exactly sure, but I do credit MMOs and the internet to a lot of what I do and who I am. And I think starting so young, I was able to kind of identify that a lot of these things, like social media, are kind of fake and made up. But just because they're fake and made up doesn't mean that they don't have weight. I mean, if humans say that it has importance, then it has importance, because the majority of people say that it does. But I would think I've been able to maneuver a little bit more healthily than maybe some of my peers have been able to, perhaps because of that MMO upbringing.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, there's definitely like the whole social media argument and all that kind of stuff is probably another couple of podcasts in a row. It's like, I think there's definitely a mindset of like how you manage yourself, I guess, in the spaces, and what you want to get out of it and how you effectively are. And I know we know that, you know, people aren't necessarily always the nicest people when they're playing MMORPGs or playing PvP competitive games or anything really, because you know that, you know, abuse knows no bounds when it comes to, you know, going from in-person real life to like going into a game. But like with MMORPGs, and I can tell you about my own little story a little bit, but like when I was a kid, the first game, I mean, I was born in 1981, Kroof. So this was a long time ago.
200 years ago.
Yes, exactly. So games were like an exciting new experience for me. Like, you know, games have still been around for a while, but like, you know, they weren't like the best back then. They were still very awesome, but it was like text-based and stuff. And I remember playing this like weird Batman 3D thing that I was obsessed with. But mostly it was the same experience. It was like we would go to each other's houses and play. So, you know, we would play 4-person Mario Kart, or we would play like fighting games together, like Final Fight or whatever, Streets of Rage and stuff, where you can have 2 or 3 people in the co-oping together. It was normally co-op games, and I used to play. So during my GCSE exams, Crying Hero knows what this is. It's just like your exams you do when you're 16. They're like they're not like SATs, but they're like for each subject. And it used to have.
I think they have the same in America, General Education Certificate.
It's like standardized testing.
It's not standardized testing.
We have standardized testing.
Anyway, I brought loads of my mates back home, and we'd have like a Super Nintendo in one room. I had a PlayStation 1 in another room. And I had like my Sega Mega Drive or something in another one. And it was like an MMO because there was so many people together. So it was always about bringing a group of people together, or like my mates together, to play games. And I always found like that was really helpful in connecting us together, to have that thing in common. It was like football, because I was massively into soccer. Sorry. When I was a kid, and it's all right. Can't stop football. Seattle just won some massive thing as well recently, which is really good. So that was always a thing. And then as I got older, I think I was in uni. The worst time to get in an MMORPG. World of Warcraft came out in my last year. That was bad. And I was playing PlanetSide. PlanetSide was my first big, like, I would say massively multiplayer thing. And this way 3 teams come together and there's hundreds and hundreds of people and you're all just fighting. It's like World v World basically, but just that's the game. PlanetSide 2 is still a very, very real thing that exists in the world. And it was all about connecting to people. It was literally all about connecting to people. And ever since like World of Warcraft, Warhammer Online is where we hired like guild meetups. We would go out into London, like people from Europe came to London. We hired this house and we went out and we enjoyed each other's company, but we all had mumble and different ways of connecting to, like Skype calls, and there were little sections in our community where we would talk, and then we had an alliance with other guilds, and other guilds joined us, and we hung out in other places in Europe at gaming shows and different places. So it was really like, and this is something that Rook said as well, those connections when you're that age where you feel like people are kind of floating off. And, you know, in school, you're kind of put into this class and you're like, you know, we're just in this group together. We don't necessarily have much in common, actually, to be fair. And as we start to dissipate, you realize that even more as you get older, because your interests expand even more so because you start to go out into the world. And then you get to this place where you're like, shit, I don't know these people hardly at all. And I've got to find my people. And I'm like 20, 21, you know. And you do that kind of sometimes in uni, and if you don't go to uni you might not have the opportunity, and maybe like gaming is one of those ways, and I think a lot of people do find that, and I did, and it was massively important. And unfortunately when I was that age, I was going through a lot of shit myself, like past history in my family. Depression is a big thing. You know, my grandfather passed away at the time. I had my first major huge relationship broke apart. There was loads of stuff going on. And then I started to go through my own depression. My escapism was playing World of Warcraft. It was huge for me. If I hadn't have got, I don't actually know what I would have done if I didn't have this game to escape. There were times probably where it was in an unhealthy way, where I would be sitting there till 5 a.m. like smoking Marlboro Reds, and, just in this massive bowl next to me, and I was just like, this is not healthy. But you know what? Even to the excess that it was the crutch I needed right at that time to help me through what I needed to get through with people as well. And I think that's what we forget as well. And earlier I kind of not regret saying what I said, but like spending too much time and using it as a way to escape completely from everything. I believe that is a real thing, but I also believe that there's different levels for different people. It's not like, I read an article yesterday. It said, if you spend more than 50 hours a week on video games, you are addicted and you have this disorder. World Health Organization and other organizations have started to pull in gaming addiction as a thing. And I'm like, gaming addiction, I get, is a real thing. Like, I understand we can be addicted to anything. You can have a cheese addiction. You can have a flipping, they just haven't put it in the DSM, It's like, not that gaming addiction is, thankfully. But do you know what I mean? It's just that it should be based on different levels and our needs and like where our situations. Life is just not as simple as that. Like, we're all very, very unique. Fornax, you're talking about your exploration of the world outside because of what your concerns that you have and being like you're at home, right? Most of the time. Like you are on the internet a lot of the time, probably exploring and using it as a tool to help you to get out into the world. Like, that's not addiction, that's a tool. That's like an actual thing that you use.
It's a portal. It's a portal for people who attach. Yeah. It is. And also this gaming addiction they can put it in the book when they put golf addiction in there, or reading addiction, or insert any other hobby that
like
people
fitness,
can get too wrapped up in. But this is boomer bullshit. Honestly, boomer bullshit.
I agree. There's a disdain.
A little bit more to it than that, but yes, it's essentially
there's a pernicious undercurrent of immoral politicians pushing bullshit.
Yes,
It's not
that's
understanding.
Hate.
Exactly.
That's what they're doing.
It's a lack of it's a lack of empathy for a generation and what a form of media means to them. No. You're angry. That's fine. That's okay. But it is like, it does feel often like a generational thing where it's like a misunderstanding of what that. Actually, no, I'm not going to say generational thing because that's bollocks. Because there are people way older than me that play video games who are perfectly believe in the positivity. If you've ever followed someone, Haughty Chicken, for example, an awesome lady, really big advocate for mental health, big supporter of games and stuff as well. Thingy Majig, who the Skyrim lady.
Cheryl.
I love
Shirley.
That's it. She's great.
I love her.
She's great as well.
Yeah.
Wow. I need to meet her.
I can't name her, but my mother-in-law plays Guild Wars, and she's a platinum defender in World v World, and she is many decades older than I am, and I am fairly vintage myself. So yeah.
I love that.
Vintage.
That was good. Yeah. But
there are times, like you were saying, Jeb. It's as with anything, there are always risks. It was so funny. I actually so I mentioned that I got Final Fantasy 11 growing up and that I was never able to play it. I just for the first time made a character in 11 because I'm gonna do a stream coming up soon playing 11. And one of the things that was so funny to me is that even now to this day, when you log into the game, a screen pops up that's like, welcome to the world of Vanadiel. Remember that real life exists and you need to have friends and family and people that are outside. Like, it is straight up a message that pops up on the game every single time you boot the game up and log into the game. Which I was both like, okay, this is kind of hilarious, but also like, yes, I mean, like we were talking about, I do think there's something to be said. Like you mentioned earlier, I don't think you have to like regret talking about it, because I know many people, and I've had many times in my own life where games became a way for good or bad, right? Yeah. For me to wrap myself up in a cocoon and either like cut myself off from things, ignore my own problems, not deal with the things I needed to. Like, it's especially difficult realizing like over the course of my life and as I've gotten older and figured out how to deal with this, like what it means to be somebody that like I suffer from anxiety and depression. So like I have to pay attention to my own patterns, like what am I doing now that like might help alleviate some element of something, but that actually isn't the most constructive thing for me overall
or is even
to be doing.
you're avoiding it, right?
Yes, even like increasing the amount of anxiety that I feel, or like, and we have to be careful. I think a lot of times if you do have those, you struggle with those things, to develop our own sense of active self-awareness, as well as our own ability to balance and juggle components in our life in a way that allows us to still maintain existence, right? So like there is all that, but I also agree with the point that you brought up in that there are times in my life where I think I needed it. And like, Crichton, even what you were just talking about, for next, what you were just talking about, like there were times in my life where it may not have been the best balance, but I do think that it was a lifeline in many ways, like it can be, gaming can be, or even reading. I see in chat people mentioning reading. I feel like I almost had like a reverse experience to a lot of you, in that because games and many things that I enjoyed were kept away from me for so long when I was younger, I had to like pick these things that I could still do and love, almost in a way that was like very furtive on the down low. like I actually like gatewayed into, I think, like the larger gaming community because of pro boards, forum role playing, and that was because it was the okay, so forum role playing is like
what form, right?
Forum, like FORUM, like game forums, or like
forum.
Like
okay,
forums.
Right. Sorry, it's a language thing. It's England,
yeah, no worries, you're good. You're good. So like I couldn't play games because like I grew up with a single mom, and I won't get too far into it, but home life growing up was a really bad, negative, terrible environment, just to be real. It was very bad. And I didn't feel safe a lot of times to exist or be myself. So I had to find these ways to engage with things that I wanted to engage with that like were like tricksy, like, well, I can't get any games and I can't play anything and I don't have any consoles, and the only time that I can do things that I like is when I'm over at my dad's. So what can I do that my mom just won't pick up on? Well, I can type on this board and write posts back and forth to other people. I can connect with communities in these ways. I can like, and it's funny because I, to this day, still feel like there are various conventions of like the gaming community or online spaces that I'm not as savvy in. I'm so behind on memes. I'm so terrible about like a lot, like whenever I type a tweet, I redraft it 50 times because like I just didn't, you were all talking about growing up in these environments where you're like learning a lot of those exchanges and WoW and all these other things. Like I literally just typed fantasy wolves and X-Men characters like in multi-paragraph.
It's very similar though. Yeah. That's what you did, yeah.
But like the way that I structure and communicate in online spaces is just different now. So a lot of times I feel like I am that weird person out that just like doesn't know how to be cool online. Like that's just me.
Yeah, but like I think like I'm gonna give you a compliment. I'm warning you. The reason why I say that is because I like to be warned sometimes, because sometimes I can't. I need time to accept it. No, I'm joking. Don't do that. But like the reason why I'm pretty sure we all like you, and I'm pretty sure we act in a similar way that we try to, is authenticity and genuineness, and I think that is a very rare thing, very rare thing. I'm not saying there aren't genuine people on the internet. I'm not saying that there aren't genuine people on Twitch. There are people who have a persona which is just on Twitch, and that's a thing. And I will always feel like that is a part of someone, but like there's some authenticity there. But I feel like a lot of the time we're putting a face out there that it isn't us. Like it isn't us, and it's not healthy. This is why the world is in the way it's in. We had a global pandemic crisis. That wasn't the only crisis. We're in a mental health crisis. We will be for years, the biggest we've ever had. If you think about the past and depression, you think about war. Like those were the biggest times for like mental health crisis as well, PTSD, that coming out of World War I and II, the invention of different counseling theories and methods and all these kind of things came out of war, for example. This and we've just come out of a crisis as well, and like being able to be authentic and genuine in the world which is predominantly fake and not real a lot of the time for a lot of people is very, very difficult. And I think, you've done well to do that. That is why people do think you're cool. That's why I think you're cool. So shut the fuck up.
Well, okay, look, thank you, Jebro. I know you've been working on taking compliments too, so I will take this compliment. I will take it and I will internalize it. But I mean, it was a journey,
I get what you're
right?
saying, though, yeah.
Like, even in those spaces, like, especially when I first started out role playing, there were still, like, even though I was not social media savvy, and I still don't think I am, right? Like, there was still a lot of self-comparison. There were still people that were popular. There were still all these bubbles, like, there's always measures of that. But it wasn't until like I really was able to, so like I found ways to connect with the community and to like do all of that on my own. And then like it wasn't until I was actually able to save up enough money to buy a PlayStation 2 in high school that like I really was able to game. And through high school and college, like gaming for me became such a huge way. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, right, though, to like have agency and to have this portal to and like an existence beyond myself. And like there were definitely times, particularly in college, where I think that my balance of mental health, my even awareness of the fact that I was struggling with anxiety and depression, which I truly didn't comprehend what was happening. I just thought that I was like stupid and like bad at doing things and lazy. And like,
lazy is the one. Yeah.
So like
other people
for
think
me,
as well.
yeah, so like for me, because I just didn't know that, like when I did fall into gaming, I fell into it hard. And there were parts of myself that like I almost needed to go into that like cocoon stasis to like develop. So the long and short story of it being, it's always hard to unravel these issues because I think so much when we talk gaming and mental health, it oftentimes is this long linear, like this long divergent narrative almost that takes so many tangents. But like there were times where I know that my balance wasn't always the healthiest, but that I did need the time and space to be able to do something, discover something, to have that portal to a choice that I didn't have. I can like remember the first time, oh my gosh, I don't know if I think it was Mass Effect that I chose to romance Liara, and I felt like God was going to descend from the heavens and obliterate me from the earth, and like my mother was going to show up and be like, no, like, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna kiss this blue woman, I think. And like, but like those were choices that I didn't.
Awesome though. Like, I'm like, that's scary as fuck. Like at the same time, you're exploring this whole new part of your sexuality and then all of a sudden you have this immediate judgment / shame that comes in from other places in the world / your life. Yet you're having this awesome explorative experience at the same time. That's scary as fuck, though, at the same time.
It is, but you know what I mean?
It's a nice adrenaline rush.
Yeah, and it's like...
That's cool way of putting it.
Even, I guess, like, the big summary of that is that even if, in those moments, technically, I was living those fantasies out in a game, right? Yeah. Or in the role playing that I was doing or stuff like that. It was really the only space where I could live that, if that makes sense, that I could make that something that was a part of my reality. And then eventually it empowered me to shape and make my own reality. And like, take inspiration from the people and the characters and the roles that I had played, and to say like, I have to stand up and fight for my own life. I have to stand up and fight for who I am, and that was something that I got emotional there at the end, but like
you can
that I can't say enough about, because it was both the people that I met through things like role playing, it was the games themselves, it was the writers, it was the developers, it was later MMOs that like made me feel like a hero in times when I felt like I was ground under someone's heel so far that I could never rise up, in a sense. And I think that that's so powerful. So like, of course, it's always about balance. And then of course you have to also like look at every other component of what's going into this, and like how you don't just make it a holding pattern forever in your life, that you are able to both balance IRL and gaming, as the Final Fantasy XI screen tells us. But there's so much to take away from that safe space, that portal into something else, and that can inspire you and can comfort you and that can help you have agency and create a vision of yourself and live in something that might inspire you to do even more. So yeah, it's interesting thinking about all of this.
I think you should get some love in the chat. I would appreciate it for Rooker and everyone for being vulnerable today. Like, another big thing shared. Like, that's a big deal. Like, we need to compliment people on doing this shit more. And like, I'm serious. Like, if we did this more in our lives and with people, I think we'd live in a better world. But there you go.
And you all get love. It's been such good sharing. I love hearing what everybody's saying about this, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's really like I was worried about the questions and stuff. I could have just had one, and it probably could have just gone on to many different things. I think you're so right about that, and like I forget often how we can realize things about ourselves within games and the stories and how they are empowering for people. I think that, especially like you're talking about, in terms of the choices that you made in Mass Effect, you know, opting to go for, did you say the blue woman? The blue woman?
Like,
who was it?
There is one same-sex lady romance that you can do from beginning to end, and that is Liara. It's Liara, yes.
Oh, I thought that was
it's
more.
It's actually super interesting. I could do like 5 podcasts about the evolution of Mass Effect from 1 to 3.
One's great. Yeah, I love that.
You see a lot of different things. Yeah, they had problem with male romance as well. Like there's only like sort of half of 2 romances I think that you can do.
Yeah.
But Liara is one of the few romance options between the span of all the games that you can romance, and if you're a femshep, then yeah, you know, you can do that. So
I think your deeply personal experience, that kind of light in the darkness of your life, lays bare the lie that representation doesn't matter and it's just ticking a box. All those people, educate yourself.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's terrible. People have to see themselves in the world that they inhabit. They have to see themselves portrayed as whole human beings with agency and flaws and the whole gambit of human emotion. And that has to be open to everybody, not just the tiny kind of myopic view of humanity that we have had for far too long, and which we are currently in the throes of shedding off this like old skin of hegemony and patriarchy and that kind of constraint nonsense. Human beings are human beings, you know, and they need to be accepted as human beings, and representation matters 100%.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, I cried so many times in End of Dragons. I'm gonna be real. It's good. When we get those videos up on YouTube, because I'm slowly putting the playthrough up, there's gonna be a few times I was a hot mess. I mean, even in shows like Star Trek Discovery recently, I've seen some representation. People are so hard on that show, and it makes me so mad because I'm just like,
I love that show so much. Honestly.
Well, it's just like Star Trek has always been at the forefront of a lot of really progressive things and like depictions for their time periods, and like
first interracial kiss. First
I know
kiss on Star Trek.
So it's like
and she
people
was
complaining about it.
Her was one of the first like African American like leads, right, in the show. Yeah, absolutely.
It's so ridiculous to me. And like in End of Dragons, even just looking at the MMO space, right? Talking about representation matters. When I was a kid, Mass Effect was such a huge thing for me. And many other literature games. Manga anime was huge as well. Like, oh my God, I got Loveless at some point, which is such a problematic manga now in retrospect. But I read that thing until the covers were broken because it was like one of the only like same-sex like representation pieces that I could get my hands on. I think I listened to the Tattoo albums like on loop for 1,000 years.
God.
Like, right?
That is a blast from the past.
There's
you
a lot
unlocked
of stuff.
core memories for me. I remember Loveless.
Yes. So there were a lot of things that happened. But I mean, I was really emotional.
Describing it. And Tattoos albums.
Sorry, that was me thinking back to listening to all the things she said on loop.
Yeah. Oh my God, that song's in my head right now. While
staring at the Loveless cardboard cutout that I negotiated getting from Borders and crying because I had feelings for a girl in my math class. So that's
it. That's those feelings are so intense though. We laugh about them now, but oh my God, those are the feelings that come out in my clients. It's heartbreaking, honestly.
Oh my gosh.
They are so real though. They're some of the first time we have them. That's an important thing. We're laughing, but it is like big.
It
huge,
is, and
massive.
like when I think back now, right, like we're talking mental health, right? Like, and like I said, at the time, there was no place for acceptance. And I want to give a bit of a quick trigger warning, I suppose. So I want to be like really clear about this and upfront with everybody. I'm fine talking about it, don't worry. But trigger warning here, brief topics pertaining to or relating to suicide. But like when I was young, it really didn't feel like there was a place for me to be myself, and that it would be better to just not be.
It's okay.
I'm like, I can say this, I can talk about it. It's really okay. I'm just a very emotional person, so like, you know.
It's a like really, yes.
Yeah. So all of this to say, like, to even have one voice where I could be, and then I could be a hero to boot. I was incredibly emotional playing through End of Dragons because this is one of the only MMOs that I play that has for so many years centered characters of so many different types and diversity and people. And in this one expansion, I not only saw representation for my partner, who's non-binary, and who is constantly like having to do this weird dance when we start playing a game, and they're like, I guess I'll pick the female model, but like, I don't know, it's gonna be weird because then there's gonna be these weird story beats that I don't resonate with, and I don't want to pick like the male model because then there's gonna be all this other weird stuff that's so like bizarrely genderized for them, and like, to have an actual character that like in the game was being referred to as they them, to have at the end the feature moment, the epilogue of our expansion, a same-sex marriage, I was so overcome because in so much media and so many games and so many MMOs that I even still play to this day, it feels like there is some level of yourself that even in the narratives you have to always be that thing that like, sure, you can read into, but that doesn't really exist in the game, if you know, like canonically. And when I think back to, like you were talking about, those games that to me made me realize that like there was even one place in the world that I could be myself, that I could see people that were experiencing something that I at the time had no language for or understanding of, that I thought was something that was condemning about myself, that I thought was something that was a terrible thing about myself. Like, I think now about how far we've come, and I think about how brave Guild Wars 2 has been in telling these stories. And for me, my mental health journey is so closely tied to this that like I can't talk about mental health without talking about my sexuality and the journey that I took with that. So I appreciate you all listening, like, but yeah, it's so important. I totally agree with you, Fornex. It's so incredibly important that I can't even put words to it, because there are many people who've been in that same situation, or even as adults confront those moments where something happens even in a game, and in that safety, that space you were talking about, that neutral space where they are allowed to kiss the blue woman, and suddenly they're like, this did awaken something in me, and then they have a place that they can actually explore that, you know. And it's so crucial, it's so important.
And this is why your life experience, one human being on the internet, proves the horrific damage that the Don't Say Gay bill is going to do in America. And it's pretense that it's protecting children. If you can watch Disney and the prince can kiss the princess, and that is acceptable levels of gender representation and sexual representation, because that's what it is, everyone, Disney's fine, right? Then it just lays bare the prejudice that what they want to do is they're fine with sexuality that they think is appropriate, and everyone else they want to put in a corner and make feel terrible. Never mind the fact that young gay children, especially trans kids, are more likely to self-harm, are more likely to commit suicide, are more likely, and they're punching down on children, and whilst holding a Bible preaching about Christ, which literally says, love thy neighbor and do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and judge not lest ye be judged. I mean, I went to a private Roman Catholic school. I know this shit, okay? It's the cruelty. What they're molding, everything is a hammer to them. They mold their religious faith into a hammer to hurt other people with. They mold their political beliefs into a hammer to pretend to have freedom, while simultaneously suppressing free speech, suppressing parental control over their children's education and isolating young children who are incredibly vulnerable. And they really need to educate themselves or be yeeted into the sun. Either way, I'm okay.
It is a very difficult thing to talk about, especially that there's so many different things, especially in America, like culture and community come into it a lot, religion and how religion, the different sects of religion that exist within America and the extremist views within that. We know obviously like across America the different extremes that that exist within the politics. We've seen the people trying to take over the government. We all know what's going on over here, but a lot of it has to do with power as well, and parents and feeling like a lack of control over their kids no matter how young they feel, because a lot of people have had so much shit happen to them in their lives where they need to feel powerful over other people, and a lot of that is a really, really heavy part of what goes on there, and it's the mental health of a lot of those people, and religion has been something where they've found their people as well, but unfortunately the beliefs they have, we definitely don't agree with those because they are harmful to people. And yeah, this is a subject. I'm going to pull away from this a little bit. I wholeheartedly agree with you. It was difficult with the scope of this podcast. I'm gonna say yes, I agree, and I'm very angry, and I have trans kid clients as well, and I'm lucky enough that I live in Washington, where all of this stuff is not going to happen at all, thankfully. But they're still scared about it, even though it's happening thousands of miles away. They still live in a country where they are seen as not acceptable human beings in the eyes of so many people. And for kids to have, and so I will address it, but so there are many kids, I see this, every day, like I'm in internship, I have trans kid clients, they range from 9 to like 17, 18, and it hurts me to my core that I have a kid that wants to commit suicide because they aren't accepted by other people for the person they want to be. It's heartbreaking. Like it cannot, I can't, and that's me being a counselor to this kid. That's not me being the kid. I can't even imagine what that's like. I know what it's like to feel suicidal. I know what it's like to not want to be on this planet, but being judged by that many people, the idea that many people hate me is like, I can't, it just makes me want to stop breathing. Like I can't breathe right now. It's horrible. And to find that, and then going back to what Rook said about like finding that representation in a game, imagine what that's like for a kid. And I found this with these kids, they found YouTube creators and they found people on Instagram that talk about it. And that's why I don't believe wholeheartedly that all of this stuff is incessantly awful, because there are pockets of hope where people can find their people and they can find inspiration and genuineness and authenticness that can pull them out of the biggest fucking holes. Like you're talking about Guild Wars 2, and you're talking about also the relationships that occur there as well. And the post Ender Dragon scene, I'm not going to talk about too much because it's like torn here. If you don't want to spoil that for post Ender Dragons, end now. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. You should have gone off by now. The two awesome people get married. Okay, we see gay marriage in the game. Like, they got married, didn't they?
No,
I mean,
they got
pretty much
engaged.
there.
What are you talking about? They got straight up married. They exchanged vows, and there are literally legal documents that are on the table next to them.
It's not a marriage; it's an engagement.
No, there's papers.
Not an engagement.
You don't get papers when you're engaged.
No,
there was a proposal.
There are literally legal papers next to them.
Chat my back.
Okay, I agree to disagree, chat, because there are literally legal papers there that are signing over estates, all sorts of stuff like that.
That's true,
they literally exchange vows in front of everybody.
Oh wait, was maybe the documents with the bar though?
It was the bar. It wasn't their life.
The bar is their life property. That is their life property.
They don't live at the bar.
They live in a house 2 feet away from the bar. They got 100% married. They exchanged
I think
vows.
they
They had
did.
friends
Girl,
there.
if that was a
You don't do
marriage.
that in
No,
engagement.
God.
Girl,
No.
if that was a marriage.
No, we are having a big gay wedding in Lion's Arch under that arch. That is what is happening.
They
There's
just
nothing
wanted
else
to
is
have
happening.
Yeah, but
a
they're not those
quiet
kind of people.
gathering.
Yeah,
They
that's
wanted to have a
that's the
quiet
thing.
gathering
Yeah, they're not
in the
that people.
place that was
That's
so
it.
important to them, like that they literally met in and worked in together, and that we first saw them in Living Season 1.
Do you think a Mesmer and a Necro want to get married in front of tons of people? Let's be real here. Let's be
Asmir,
real.
definitely.
No. Mesmer's like all about illusion and hiding in the,
Asmir's
I'm
a
sorry.
socialite.
No.
Okay, Nick
just-
Nick says in chat, I think it would be fair to say they are legally married, but
Yes.
haven't had a
Works
reception.
for a reading that. Thank
you, Nick. Thank you, Nick.
Honestly, I'm with Crew. I didn't read it like that at all. Because before you get married, you have a load of legal documentation to fill out.
Yeah, but that's in the real world. The real world is boring.
And second of all, I thought they were just declaring their intention to get married in front of their most close friends, and then we're going to get a beautiful big wedding. That was my hope. Right out with rainbows all the way.
Nick, I mean, can you find out for us? Is this something you
Nick,
can do right now?
Nick, should we
Pushing it to
I would
do
never,
this.
I don't
shouldn't
want to
be.
like. No. I'm not saying you have to, but I would be very appreciative if there's anyone that you know
Look.
that could find out. I would.
I think you
wanna
can.
know.
I think you can read it any way that resonates.
They
with
are
you.
going to
We
have
should. We
that
will
level.
not put.
I read it more.
Not put Nook on.
Crew is still going.
I'm putting the hammer down.
Rook is
Someone
trying
has to.
trying work this
Regardless of proposal and or wedding, they are together and in love. That is what is important. Not us being like capitalistic consumers. It's not a
Oh, that's
spectacle.
true. That's true. Yeah, it doesn't even matter because many people don't even get married nowadays, which is true. But like, let's think about what it means. You can see this like Twitter battle coming out. Jebro
Oh my
and
gosh.
Rookery feel that there was a marriage that occurred post End of Dragon storyline. Crichton Herald and crew think fuck no.
Fuck no.
Like if you agree with Crichton Herald and crew, retweet if you agree with Jebro and Rook.
Definitely.
You have to do like,
I'm
you can't do
sorry.
the same option for both. I was like, that won't work. You have to
We
do
got
like
very
and retweet.
passionate. We got very passionate and very intense, and Nick
Very
got caught in the
weirdly
crossfire
passionate.
here.
Yeah, weirdly passionate about that.
I am their wedding planner. I will get this done.
I'm glad Nick,
guess-
Nick getting caught up in the crossfire isn't the worst person at least to get caught up in the crossfire. You're very welcome.
I mean, look, either way, yes, there is obviously a visible commitment made, which I think is super, super important. Compare that to so many other games. And like, I mean, yeah, it's such an important thing. And I mean, like you said, I think no matter who you are or what your experience has been, right? There are things that resonate in games. So like, just as though if somebody came to me and said like, I'm trying to think of something really wild. I don't know. This really weird specific thing happened to me, and then I saw in a video game that like this same character had gone through the same thing, and I felt really comforted by it. I would never be like I nullify how you felt about that because I have not myself experienced exactly what you experienced, right? Like there's so many ways we relate to games, be it, just that it's something you do for fun, be it something that has been an escape for you, be it something that has been tied to your mental health or, sexuality journey or gender identity or, existence in any way, shape,
Yeah,
or
I was gonna
form
say,
on
yeah.
this earth. Like, for me personally, it comes from that place. And it is always a little nerve-wracking because, I know, having talked about this, in multiple mental health capacities and, with the LGBT stream teams I'm a part of and things like that, and some of the summits we've done, that there will always immediately then be in the comments like, why has this podcast turned into some kind of progressive garbage? And I'm just like, well, I mean, the great thing about Guild Wars 2 and many other games is that they actually have that in it, and that it, again, is not something that you can nullify about anybody else's experience just because you haven't experienced it or don't relate to it yourself. So, I mean, there's a lot of things, so many things you can talk about with how games, I think, help in many capacities. That's just one facet for me, and I canonically say that they're married, and I believe in that in my heart with every fiber of my being. So that's what it's gonna be in Guild Wars 2. I've decided. I'm gonna edit the Wikipedia if it isn't already, and nobody can stop me. I'm so good at hacking.
I think you can, yeah.
I got it.
Oh my god! Wow, we're just finding out everything about you right now. You have hacking skills now.
Yeah, I'm super good at it.
I'm a super good hacker. Is that what you just said?
I am not. Let me be clear.
Rookery is changing their Twitter handle to Hackery. And now
Rookery,
like
head of Anonymous, absolutely confirmed here today. Yeah,
I'm gonna sneak into every MMO Wikipedia and make everybody canonically married to each other, and if that's my life work, I feel good about it. I'm gonna get a big array. Don't you worry about it. We're gonna have all kinds of representation. We will also have some straight couples, but we're gonna have so much more. Everybody's married together. 2022, year of love. I've decided. So
I mean, Logan and Ritlock are clearly married. They're just not
100%.
They're definitely
shipper
married.
Shipper extraordinaire. Yeah.
The shippiest, firstiest people on the internet.
Can I say something about?
Oh no,
those
you cannot
hate
say
comments?
anything.
Please,
How
please,
dare you?
Please.
Of course you can.
Please. So what? I want when I come across somebody who has these kind of deeply entrenched negative feelings about a group of people, be it women, there's a lot of misogyny online, hooray, be it
There is. That is very true.
the LGBT plus community, which I can never get the letters right, so forgive me, despite the fact that I'm a member of it.
There is a lot of letters, in all honesty. There's LGBTQIA plus, and and there is more.
Yeah,
coming up every day, and that's great. That's cool.
I think back, so I'm not going to show how vintage I am. I think back to what I was taught in school about Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And he was like we are now. He was at an inflection point in history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they were trying to overturn horrific historic injustices. And at the time, contemporaneously, the news, the press, everyone called him a radical, called the movement violent, monsters, not supported by the majority and everything.
Oh, this happened 2 years ago as well with Black Lives Matter as well. It's the same thing. Yeah. Not the same thing. I'm not going to say the exact same, but
it's the same sphere, right?
Yeah.
And he said that he did not only want to free Black people from the misery and suffering of Jim Crow and the horrific legal system that was poised against them and still is. He wanted to free the people who were hating as well. Mm-hmm. He wanted to lift everybody up, because I think that you can want to yeet these people into the sun. And that is an entirely understandable experience. And you can want to rage at their stupidity and their hate and the pain and the suffering and the death that they cause. They genuinely do harm. Mm-hmm. But you have to remember that these people are led by a Pied Piper of greed and propaganda. And the best thing that we can do is reach out to them. Now, I'm not saying put yourself in danger. I'm not saying anything like that, but I don't think that we should write people off. If a person can be reached and lifted out of hate and lifted back into love and acceptance, I think that that's a noble pursuit for everybody. And yes, there are, of course, some people who are beyond redemption. But if Final Fantasy XIV has taught me anything, people's stories, their own journeys can have incredible traumatic effects on them, and we have to reach out with the kindness and compassion that we would want them to reach out to us with. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I think to a degree it's difficult, because I think in the world we live in now, there's almost the extremes of it. There is the extremes of it there as well. There is, like, I think a lot of kids specifically, and people feel like when they can't be accepted, that's just not good enough. And that, from that perspective, and in my opinion, it is not good enough. And then we can reach out and we can be nice, but that takes more. It's just a lot, because people are trying to explore their own identity in themselves. then they have to do that as well. Like there should be some kind of, it's difficult. Again, this is another conversation which is very difficult to have right now specifically because it brings up a lot. But I agree with you. Like we do have to talk more in a way which is respect. And it's like me as a counselor, and I can tell you this is something that I have to do. If I have a client who comes to me and is homophobic, has been, and again, I'm bringing up themes which might be triggering for people. They are abusive, they are alcoholic, they have, abused women or men, they hate, anyone from the LGBTQIA plus community. If I have that client come to me, I cannot forward them on, refer them. No matter how much I disagree with that person, they are my client, and I have to listen to them, and I have to be I have to empathize with them. My job is an empath. Like that's part of what I do as a counselor. Like I have to have empathy with them on some kind of level. I know what it's and talk about these things, and I have to sit with that person. And I'm not saying that, and that's my job, and that's what I accepted to do. But even just doing that is difficult, is my job. So like having and then being understand like that, having to maybe feel like we should be doing that to people generally without it being like our actual thing that we're getting paid for. It's like so difficult. It's like,
can I clarify? So I'm talking about leaders in the community. I'm talking about parents. I'm not talking about younger people who are desperately who are just trying to figure out themselves, let alone trying to rehabilitate someone whose life experiences.
And yet, I mean, there's a journey everybody takes in that, right? Like, not that I would say that we talked about my mom on and off today, but not that I would say that she necessarily has been fully rehabilitated in a sense, right? But I do think it's fascinating looking at relationships, and even in games, like when I think about games, and we were talking about earlier about the idea of navigating things or social situations or conversations that are difficult. There was this recent, it was so interesting to me. There was this recent discussion about, I've been talking a lot about Turning Red, the movie recently, because I thought it brought up so many interesting things. But one of the things that I saw much of the community talking about was the fact that many people were like, the most unrealistic thing about this movie isn't the panda, it's the fact that the mom apologizes at the end. And like, that would never happen, and this is a fairy tale, and like all this stuff. And it made me think about games and how much like conflict resolution in games, I think, gave me strength and hope that like even growing up in a situation where, again, like I've had to negotiate and figure out ways to deal with that relationship, particularly in my life, for almost my entire life. And while like some people have to make different calls on that, like as you grow up and you deal with it, how do you deal with the connections in your life, be they family, found family, friends, other people in your guild, other people in your FC, right? Like, when do we, fight for reconciliation? When is it a detriment to our own mental health? When is it, something that we have to sever ties? When is it? So, like having myself over the course of my life, I think, chosen to attempt as I grew and became more mature and learned more tools myself, the reconciliation route. And yet when to some degree, right, which requires an enormous amount of compromise, oftentimes on my own behalf. And yet, I think a lot of what I even learned about negotiating that, even now, what's so cathartic for me in many games is the fact that, while there may not always be perfect resolutions to things, and our world right now is so messy, like we're talking about all these stressful contexts, all these different things that have been happening, all these movements, all these issues that have come up. We were even talking about it before the podcast. I feel like I can go to games and have a moment where I go, maybe this is fantasy, but again, like I was talking about earlier, maybe there's a way to take the steps to make it reality. And sometimes that feels so empowering in a space where you feel so disempowered so much. And I think a lot of my even patience and ability and to kind of negotiate or even think about pursuing a path of reconciliation or understanding has at many points in my life been reinforced by what I see in games that also push a similar message of trying to reconcile and bring peace and spread the love like you were talking about, Fornax, and it's not always easy, But I think there is something to be said about games as a space almost creating, again, like we've talked about, that neutral ground where those issues that can be really complex or difficult to untangle in real life, you can almost simplify them in a sense in like a more neutral space where I think many people are encouraged to meet in a way that sometimes people will turn away from, sometimes people will or won't take away a lesson from, but that many people can actually be affected by and come away from it either, you know, more hopeful or with a new perspective they didn't have before, a new gateway, a new door that's open.
Mm-hmm. There was a word you said there that is probably one of the most important words that it will ever come out of, like, I think like moving forward or growth or moving to a place of I would say more mental health, and it was hope. That's the word. That is the literal word. That is a one big word in counseling specifically, is if everything else in someone's life is completely fucked beyond all recognition, Fubar, if there is a sliver of hope within that person, you know that you can work, you know where you are, you know that, because hope is the thing. And that's something that I think a lot of games do, and stories and media and things and people, when they can instill hope. And I think, you know, those relationships we were talking about in, you know, Mass Effect, and we're talking about in Guild Wars 2 as well, when a kid, or in Kanto, or the other films and movies and different things. God, there was a really good movie when I was a teenager. I can't remember what it's called. But even like those teenage kind of movies you watch where you have you're seeing more gay relationships occurring and stuff like that, those kinds of things where you feel like you are seen a little bit more in this world and there's someone, so you don't feel alone. Like essentially that's a lot of it as well. Like, you know, empathy is so strong because if you can feel seen and heard and acknowledged by other people, that gives you a sense of belonging in the world, and that is more important than people realize, I think, because a lot of us probably don't feel that a lot of the time and we do feel alone because life is fucking hard. It doesn't matter who you are, you get rich or poor, life is hard. And sure, it's a lot easier for the people at the top, but there is people who are affected by mental health as well, because a lot of what money represents is not real. And this is just my own opinion, that bit, but like, it's, you know, for the poor, so there's a theory, and I don't know if people have heard it, it's called like basic needs theories. It is by Maslow. It's basically you need to have these basic needs in life before that you are able to even like think about being healthy in terms of mental health. And that's like shelter, food, water, okay, and being able to have money to live. Like that's the basic, like so many people on this world, on this planet do not even have that. So can you imagine how many people have mental health problems? And then, can you imagine even if those people have access to something or a story or just anything that they can hook onto and have a little bit of hope, like how important that can be to just lift them above that line to the point of survival, let alone like being able to do anything else and like move towards growth and doing better in life for themselves, like, you know, no matter what is happening to them depending on their unique situation. It can be ridiculously empowering. Like I'm just fucking stupid, and I don't think like ArenaNet, and I mean I know that they know that it is important, but I don't think they realize, I think sometimes, how important these things are, and even like, you know, Square Enix turning around sometimes, and because I feel like maybe a lot of people didn't get seen by Square Enix and probably have now. I don't know, I don't want to speak for everyone in that, but there is that feeling that that's changed, maybe, I guess. Has it? I don't know. Is there any new story stuff that came out? I think
good and bad. I mean, I've done several long talks about it. There's great character. If we're talking specifically Final Fantasy XIV, there's great characters. There's great story. There are really important beats. The latest expansion actually did have a lot to do with mental health, specifically, I would say, themes of depression, themes of like those kinds of mental health struggles. When it comes to actual like full across the board representation, like there's a lot of weakness still for many areas, but
They are. They are gender dimorphism. They're removing that from the attire that they have, so they're allowing proper representation of clothes. So you can wear the feminine or the masculine, whatever your representation you have in your gender.
Well, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean it's also financially good for them. Let's be real.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I need to do my research a little bit more on that. But I have people that know, so thank you for informing.
I would say you're talking about hope. Hope can take many forms. I mean, I would never advocate laying down and letting these monstrous ideas overtake the community. I'm a fighter. I no fucks given here. I will, but I just don't want to. I think so. Hope can take many forms. So it can take forms in stories and representation in movies, and fighting back against the bullshit narratives that are online, the disinformation and the misinformation that is spread, that we just as a society have no clue how to deal with at the moment. It's so new, it's so fresh. We're struggling to kind of catch up and try and figure out how to do it. And education is going to play a huge part in people being able to differentiate between actual relevant information that is actually based in reality and nonsense bullshit talking points propagated by people for profit. That's a whole thing. But I don't know. I also think that you have to remember that when I look at the battle lines of the LGBT and the I guess the fundamentalist bigotry, what I see is hurt people on both sides. The LGBT community historically hurt. The Jews were not the only people being murdered by the Nazis. Let's be perfectly clear, right? And it's gone on in legislation in every nation on the planet against my community, right? Throughout history. And we're only now just starting to actually make some headway and be recognized as human beings. But I guess I've lost my train of thought. Oh God, it just disappeared. It vanished into
the best of us.
That's this podcast.
Okay.
We talk about
There's
so many
a lot.
different things.
There's so much, but it's all good to talk about.
But the people on the other side are being just fed so much misinformation, and how disgusting and how awful must your life be that you can turn around to a child who is suffering and tell them that they are wrong and they are dirty. And I mean, you have to be a broken person in some capacity to do that.
This is what I was talking about before, and people, how they've been brought up. Like as kids, there's that cycle. So a lot of what happens in like abuse is a very cyclical thing. It's a cycle that happens throughout like family history. You know, it's something that happens and happens again. And if not, unless that gets stopped somewhere, and it doesn't have to be just physical abuse. It can be verbal. It can be homophobia. It can be whatever. You know, phobia, like against or ists or whatever. You know, someone has to stop it. Unless that happens, that will continue, because those opinions and thoughts and theories, whatever you want to say, will continue because no one's educating themselves out of that. No one's pulling themselves out of that circle to get educated or to like change that. And there are people that do that. I mean, if you want to go to some extreme levels, like there was actually a leader of the KKK who pulled himself out with there was a journalist back in the day, and he met often with an African American man who really influenced and changed his opinion, but he had to pull himself out of this place, which is so he was the leader of this group, and we know what that group represents. And I even feel bad just even saying the name. I don't like saying it, and it's a very
are you talking about the leader of Life After Hate?
I can't remember the name of I can't remember specifically.
That sounds familiar.
But it was very like, you know, this is the kind of what it takes, you know. And to a degree, and as a counsellor, I understand my view is very unique and different, and I think we can all understand, you know, our own takes on it. But like, there's just so much to it. Like, it's just, and even nowadays, you know, you have people, and I think you're right. Like, greed is another thing which really, really comes into it. You know, it's not about them. It's not even, they may not even think the things they're saying. It doesn't matter. Their message earns them money, and they know they can latch onto a ton of people who are going to support their cause, push it through. And now we are in a place where women aren't going to have control of their own bodies, and that is just fucking stupid in 2022. Like you think how can we be here? Like, why where are we? Like, this is not the timeline that I bought into, you know. This is Back to the Future fucked up flipping, you know, I don't know, hopefully someone gets that reference. And like, I can't remember his name, but he created a pretty awful world, and it was exactly like Trump. Anyway, and it's just like it's really, really different. I want to try and come again out of this. I'm infused by your passion, and I would love to talk about this. That would have to be a different podcast, because I want to try and keep Guild Wars 2 in the mix here, as well as respecting everyone's opinions and beliefs, because all this stuff is important, and it does come into our games. Because yesterday or the day before, we had so Bungie actually was one of the first game companies that I on my radar as well, because obviously things only appear in my feed because they trend, for me specifically. But Bungie is one of those companies, and they came out and said, you know, oh god, what was the actual tweet? Let me just make sure I quote this correctly. Unless anyone else can remember, I'll find it. I've got it here somewhere. Standing up for reproductive choice and liberty is not a difficult decision to make, and Bungie remains dedicated to upholding these values. Okay, so that's what they said, which was awesome. I actually think ArenaNet said it better. I'm not like, you know, not favoritism or anything. But then ArenaNet came out and said, your body, your right. Simple and effective. Very good. And like, so right. But you go through the replies to this, and you're like, who the fuck are these people? And why are they playing my game? And then you're just like, I mean, and adopting what you said before, Phoenix, as well, like, I jumped into these replies and I started going off on one. And like, I should know better. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? I need to advocate for like my friends. I want to tell people that, you know, this is not how you are playing a game, which is literally telling the stories every single day that so many people have found empowering, uplifting, life-saving, and all this stuff. Like, what the fuck? What is happening here? Like, this, are you existing in the same world? And then my anger came out. And yes, I'm a counselor, and yes, I know we should talk to people with respect and everything else, but I'm still fucking me at the end of the day, and I can still get angry about themes and subjects, and I know I'm going wildly off the point, but this is how engaged I get in this stuff, and this is what I mean as well. Like, you know, I can get like that, and I'm a trained professional.
Let me tie this in to one of the next questions that you were going to ask, because you just said yourself, Jeb, right, that like, I know that this is off topic and we could do a whole other podcast about it, but it does affect the world and the landscapes that we live in, right? There is a trend in the gaming community that politics should be kept out of games. But
it shouldn't. Sorry.
No.
I was agreeing with what you were saying. The point of coming up, I believe that it should be.
What it comes
I need a
down
bullshit
to,
emoji. That's what I need.
I know. What it comes down to, and as somebody who has always been, I've been in the arts as long as I can remember. Like, I have my mom's a piano teacher. Here we are going through bits and pieces of my life today, but like, this is again just my lived experience. Like, I grew up in the arts. I went to art school. I ended up, singing, acting. And one of the things that's so interesting to me is that games are an extension of art. Like, yes, there are many other things that go into them. There are many other components to them. But one of the things that has always been stressed to me in any point of my life in art is that the world we live in informs and shapes art, as well as, in the case of games, the people who play them and the communities within them. And one of the next questions that you had brought up, Jeb, was, what stresses you out in games? So like, if we know that games can give us mental health wise an escape, a reprieve, a way to kind of step outside of ourselves, a neutral ground to examine ourselves, a safe place or safe haven when we might be struggling with the components of ourselves, what is it then that can be one of the negative effects of gaming in our mental health? And I mean, to be completely frank, I think one of the things that really, especially as I got older, was so difficult was the fact that even within the gaming spaces that I enjoyed, there could be so much vitriol against even these facets of my own existence or our existences, right? I think some of the most stressful times I ever had playing Overwatch were literally when I was just trying to do calls on comm, and I couldn't even keep streaming. I couldn't keep streaming it because like the way people would go off, the sexism, the aggression, I'll get another warning here, the rape threats, the sheer amount of that, it was unbelievable to me in a space that I was so passionately in love with. These issues, these topics. I mean, even like that tweet that went out from ArenaNet, which props to them. Yes, your body, your right. Like many of us have been reading these horrific threads from researchers and historians and scientists and medical professionals about what life was like before Roe versus Wade, right? Like, and what that means for the life and safety of people in this country, people who may have an experience similar to my own or a biology similar to my own. Like, and it's like when I read that and then I see that this place that I love, there are so many people that, you know, are in that space that would probably like, I mean, their opinions would just so affect my own personal well-being. That can be incredibly stressful. I've had these kinds of things across the board, even to endgame content, where when I was trying to do endgame content a few years ago in content creation, there was a particular figure that through like some of the weirdest, most bizarre, low-key sexism I've ever, and manipulation and control that I've ever examined, almost completely turned me off to endgame content at all, because it became this point of not like play the content, learn things about the content, but like, I'm gonna teach you how to be good at this game, and I'm gonna groom you to do this thing, and like if you mess up, I have the license to get furious with you. If you dare to speak out against me, I have the license to make you feel lesser and terrible in every way that I conceivably can. And so, like, it is one of the dangers as well of our space, especially in MMOs. It is one of the stresses as well. And learning how to set your own boundaries and navigate that, whether that's just a toxic person, whether it's something more insidious, like these issues that we're seeing, whether it's the incredibly stressful political climate that brings out moments with people that reveal opinions that literally could be something that could cause you harm or death, whether you are, you know, a person of color. I use that term loosely. I know there's a lot of discussion right now about it even being something that is like a good term overall, but like, or being LGBTQI plus, or being, you know, identifying as a woman, or being, you know, anything in a space, like those things really do affect, and you have to be careful, especially in MMOs, because they can make you feel unsafe in a place that is your safe place.
100%. One of the reasons that you're not seeing me right now is because I want a level of separation from the scrutiny. As a female creator, you're pretty, so everyone's only there to look at you, and they're going to simp for you, and you're a boob tuber, or
a boob tuber.
You're
I've not heard
boob
that
tuber.
Before.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. And I
vocabulary
live to educate. I live to educate.
Thank you very much.
Or you're an ordinary looking person, and therefore every comment is about how ordinary you are. And I don't want that. I don't want to even get my foot in that. I don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with that in my life, which is why I want people to come to my channel and interact with my content because of what I think and how I present my content, and the content of my character and the content of my channel, not the arbitrary genetic lottery of the person that I am, that I had literally no control over. You know, I've received weird. I mean, I had to block a couple of people because they were literally requiring your services, Jebro. I mean, some people are deeply troubled, but the rest of it is just weird comments or sexual comments, or it's all uninvited. And my rule of thumb when I'm online is I will not do anything or say anything to somebody that I would not do to their face in person in real life. And I wonder what you guys think. Let's derail it completely. with the fact that Elon Musk has taken over Twitter. Yes, there we go. There it is.
You're really going away again. I feel like I'm gonna have to like. I mean,
But do you think he could help people's mental health by actually, because he's talking about having some sort of accountability, right? Stripping away the anonymity, which I think is an incredibly double-edged sword, because a lot of people, especially in a lot of gay people in fundamentalist communities, protect themselves with that anonymity. A lot of journalists protect themselves with that anonymity. Imagine being a journalist in Russia at the moment trying to actually talk about the truth of what's happening in Ukraine. That anonymity protects them. But then again, there are also an army of bots and hate merchants who are just spreading this fanning the flames of dissent for profit. So I am. And I think it's, and in social media, it is destroying people's mental health. You look at Instagram and the stats for young women and young people in general, and the gender dysmorphia, and what do you think? Do you think that this eccentric lunatic billionaire will have a positive outcome on the landscape, or do you think it's just going to be a dumpster fire for mental health even further?
Well, I think this isn't even an issue of Elon Musk specifically, right? Like, let's talk about games, right? Like, look, I will connect these things together in whatever ways we can, because I love the topics that are being brought up, even if, we go around. But like we were mentioning even before we went live today, everything that's happened with Blizzard, right? And obviously that's a whole other big thing. Talking about this question that Jebro had posed, like what are stresses within games? Talking about companies that are taking action, like Guild Wars 2, to actually say something, stand up for something, make visible, distinctive change in their own companies. Like, Elon Musk is very prevalent in this discussion about Twitter, is very visible right now. But when it comes down to it, even in our gaming communities, when it comes to the environments, the tone, the content, the financial support, the backing, all these things, right? The idea of one eccentric billionaire, it's like, this is a thing we see everywhere. When you look at like the extent to which the actual board itself of like Blizzard, for example, has these bizarre, weird, like, kind of like weirdly incestuous relationships with one another, and not like literally, but in the sense that like who was overseeing and protecting this company, and why were they or weren't they accountable for their whims, decisions, or lack of action? And then you look at like how they're protected in other ways that have kept them from facing consequences. Like, again, we cannot fully separate politics from any of the platforms, games, or things that we engage with. All we can do is learn and educate ourselves, arm ourselves, and protect ourselves, and look for companies that are making different decisions, platforms that are making different decisions. But as you're pointing out, Fornax, it's very difficult when we have very visible platforms or very popular games or very, that mean a lot of things to different people, or are outlets in many different ways for people, whether that be connecting to a community, whether that be advocating for a cause, like you're talking about reporting with the level of anonymity, whether that be any way, right, that people use these platforms, but also the more negative sides of both MMO online spaces, but also social media and the communities, broadcasting, and everything that encompasses that, right? It's not just a matter of Elon Musk. It's the fact that like we have to turn a critical eye on every company and or every person that is an eccentric billionaire that seems to have power over platforms or games that we participate in, because there is real harm that is done in many ways.
So I guess my next question is, as you, what role, if any, does the government play in overseeing these platforms to make sure that the mental health of young people is protected?
I don't know if we can address this, Jebro. You might have to.
This is a bit out of the scope. I
apologize.
It's okay. It's just a bit out of scope of the podcast, and it's getting to a point where it could be very. There are going to be many different views, and we're just getting a little bit away. And I understand that it is very. We had this conversation. We were talking about this before as well. And this is the thing, like it's all mental health oriented, and I get that. I'm trying to keep it.
It's a deep and complex topic. I apologize. I think this is an area that's worthy of discussion, but not here. I apologize.
Absolutely, no. You don't have to apologize at all. I would love to have this conversation. It's not that I don't want to have it. It's just keep it within the scope of what we're talking about right now. It's very difficult because that one question could be the title of one podcast that could go over a series of podcasts, because politics and our views of politics and how they're important and whatnot. The one thing I mean is, and again, what Rookery is saying, almost called you the chess one. It's been so long. Yeah. In a time long, long, long ago, existed a bird of chess, and that was a thing. I do intros for people. It's fine. So, but I think about politics. The thing is not forgetting that all of this stuff is linked in with our stories and our games and everything else. And obviously, you know, like, this is another place where people find escapism and people of like-mindedness, as well as empathy and community and belongingness. There's a better word than that, but that's the one I chose. In games, to escape people and things like Twitter. At the end of the day, if Elon Musk is going to be the way, just to kind of nail in the coffin that one for a sec, if Elon Musk is going to be the way he is in that place, and he's going to create an atmosphere which is not safe, people will leave. People who are in that place where they can't leave because they might be addicted or feel like they can't pull themselves out of that world, hopefully they find some help to do that. And I know that for what we do specifically as people, we will have the choice ourselves to be like, do we want to be using Twitter as he is the representative of that with his views, depending on how we feel about him and what he thinks, because there might be some good ideas, but like you say, there are two sides to this. There's I can't even say the word. People
anonymity.
That's the one of people, which is so important, and is our freedom. And on the internet, it should be a place to be free. But that the word also harms people, because we cannot hold people accountable for the abuse that they give other people as well. So it's a freedom, but it's a freedom that is also abused heavily. And is part of what happens in America every day. You know, and so it's like, it's a plus that we should be free, but freedom of speech is very different now as it was like 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. You know, like, freedom of speech is a very different thing, because freedom of speech shouldn't be about hate. You know, like, you shouldn't be free to say, I hate this person because I don't think that's okay, etc. Like, we shouldn't be hating people. That's just not what should be happening. Freedom of speech should be, you know, putting an opinion across about what you believe. I get it, but not hate speech. That's not what freedom of speech is about now. And I think he is of a generation where he has no idea what the fuck that means anymore, and he's so rich that he is above all of that. He's his cloud, and I'm even going out of the subjects as well, because I've got strong feelings. But
I think this is a place where you and I actually might have a different opinion about hate speech than some of our American cousins in chat, because in the UK, hate speech specifically is illegal. You can be prosecuted for hate speech, for inciting violence and hate speech. And it is there are protected classes under it. For example, the gay community, women, BAM, which is a British way of saying ethnic minorities and people from diverse backgrounds who are not the majority here. And I think that a lot of Americans specifically would be very protective of free speech, even when it can be incendiary. So that would be the title of the next podcast, if you like.
Yeah, it's different here. You learn that everything is different here. You learn that America is a country, but then each state has its own specific nuances and laws and heaviness on those laws and vision towards drugs and legalities around that, and driving laws and all these different things which confuse the ultimateness out of me. One thing I do want to do, because I have not heard from Kroof for a long time, is bring Kroof back in somehow and like see what you think about this.
I just enjoyed listening.
I mean, I feel bad that I've not pulled you back into this. So I'm going to ask you one of these questions, unless you wanted to say something. I did actually say, like, given the this is actually a question in here, so it's not even my fault that we started talking about this, because one of my questions was, given the political climate and struggles our world is facing, what do we think games provide our safe spaces and etc. We kind of talked about that, but I want to know what your inventory looks like, Griff.
Oh, my inventory? Okay. So, I went through phases of having unkempt inventory that was just a mess. So, I've been there. Certain characters still I've not given much attention to. However, I think that I have more of a half and half concept of like sometimes I'll let my inventory accrue stuff, and then I'll have moments where I want to do some spring cleaning. There's a motorcycle going by right now, so I want to do some like spring cleaning, and then
when you tell us, I'm
everything.
like, yeah, that just adds to it. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
just let us guess. I mean, it could be more fun. Sorry, continue.
Oh my gosh. So I go through moments of needing more structure and clarity in my inventory. But I wouldn't say that I'm like a clean freak where everything has to be like absolutely here at any given point. Right. So I kind of follow in my normal day-to-day life where I let things get dirty and let things be sloppy, not stress too much about it. But I have my moments where I, clean up after myself to have some more order. Very balanced.
Order is the thing there. Oh man. So there are some. So the reason why I asked that question is, I know there's someone. You okay though?
Are you going to be doing some like Freudian analysis of like how my life is depending on my inventory setup? Am I more of a person who enjoys long walks on the beach, or do I prefer more carnival rides?
I like. Those are the extreme options we have. Got walks in the park or like
bungee
carnival
jumping.
rides, really?
Can I be bungee jumping while walking on the beach?
I think that was more. I think that was more insightful as to your life than anything else I could pull out of your inventory. To be fair.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. Well, actually, funnily enough, and there's this great creator on TikTok, and I might try and pull up a clip of him actually. Sorry, them. And they talk about. I spoke about this before the podcast, and it was about playing different games to teach different things or to give examples of what's going on. And he was talking about ADHD folks, and he was talking about why is it that you skip the tutorials and skip like the structural parts of games, and like what is it that's bringing up for you that is maybe difficult for you to think about or look at or even imagine happening. What about teaching a kid or teaching an adult specifically? It's actually talking about adults more. About PvPing in a game like Mortal Kombat and being able to be humble in losing against someone who is better than you at something, and also playing things like Elden Ring and learning how to be patient and how to breathe and how to play games where that are very, very difficult and challenging, and you will come up against a wall no matter how many times, but every single time you do that, you're able to learn a little bit more. So I drank some Coke and it's like I'm burping uncontrollably, and like how you can
podcast. My God.
I like how you threw it away. Let us hear, Jebro. Oh.
No, and it's rude. I'm English. And how you could basically learn these ways to be patient and stuff, and it's really, really true, because ever since I stopped playing, I started playing Elden Ring on stream recently. Wonderful game. I know Crew's doing it as well. But, I even thought about these things while I was doing it. And I was like, okay, I need to, because I get really stressed out when I play games like flipping these games with really difficult bosses. I'm like, why am I playing this experience? It's awful. And then I'm like, well, actually, the combat's great. The game is beautiful. And if I just learn some patience here and I keep trying to think about this in a different way, I wonder how well I could do. And I was starting to do a lot better than I was in previous games, and I was like, damn, I'm actually learning, I'm progressing, and I feel like I'm actually learning some new stuff about myself. Even just I'm like 40-year-old man playing Elden Ring, and I was just like, wow. So I wonder like what else can we learn from like the games we play, and the different things. And like inventory is one of those things, you know, how we manage that, and the items, and like maybe even some of the stuff we place value on in our inventory, and the things we keep, you know. Like for example, I've kept, like, I know that I'm a very sentimental person, so I've kept things like those Evan Nash Blade tokens from, like, you know, way back in the day. And it's not because I can't be asked to get rid of them. It's because of my sentimentality. Like, it's because I like to have the memory there of that thing. So that reveals a little bit about myself. And even just management, and also the hecticness of everything. Like, my life isn't necessarily like that all the time, but it can feel very much like I'm doing a lot of things at the same time. Like, I've got, you know, all of these bags over here that I haven't opened because, you know, I've got all of this stuff here, and I can't address one thing because I took a couple of these bags and I opened those, but then I was like, oh no, there's a pretty thing over here, I've got to touch this one, I've got to do that. And that's very much what my life is like. Like, I have got so many things going on in my life. I'm like, I do a little bit here, a little bit there, and I never finish anything. And like, it just feels so incomplete. And like, I've got this podcast today, but it's also my respite from the rest of the studying, housework, everything else I have to do in my life, which is like, you know, all of us basically. Like, do you know what I mean? So there's these little insightful kind of peeks into ourselves. So it's interesting to learn and to think about sometimes. That's kind of why I asked, if that helps.
My inventory is a disaster.
That means you are a disaster of a person. Yeah. Done. I'm joking.
Well, it's interesting to me. Okay, so this is like a very specific thing to me. My inventory is a disaster. I think there's many reasons for this. One, that I grew up playing CRPGs, so the idea of holding on to everything to the bitter end of your existence, because maybe at like 50 hours into the game, there's going to be some stupid medallion you picked up in the first chapter that unlocks an entire secret. Yes. Yeah. So part of it is that I grew up with that mentality where you hold on to everything until you literally cannot get rid of it. The other part of it, weirdly enough, and I actually do think it's interesting that you asked this question. It's kind of a joke now, like a running gag. I know it is with you too, Jeb, and on your channel, that the inventory is a disaster and everybody teases you. And like, I'm fine with that. The greater level of this, weirdly enough, is content. And you know that the greater level to this, weirdly enough, is that like my anxiety brain, so like for everybody in general, everybody's anxiety is a little bit different, but my anxiety brain does this thing where it keeps a running list of stuff 24/7 at all times. Like, these are the things that have to be done. It could be pick up a sock from the floor, all the way to make a super important appointment. It could be like it doesn't even matter. It could be a clump of dust that I noticed in the corner of a room that I keep thinking, oh, I should probably like get our little Roomba to clean up or something. All the way to like, I don't know, we have to do taxes. So the scale of importance doesn't matter, but the high level of anxiety that I feel at all times for every single thing on that list, no matter how small or how big, is like the same bizarrely high threshold. So when I started to parse apart like why I was in a deadlock so much about certain things, like I can't get anything done that I seem to need to get done, and also I am constantly at like level 100 on the anxiety scale that I've just made up in my mind. And yet, like, when I would sit down and, you know, be talking to somebody and be like, I'm so overwhelmed, I have all this stuff to do, there's that one weird clump of dust in the corner that I still have not gotten, and for some reason my anxiety is telling me that because that dust has not been cleaned up, I have failed at all of my life. And also, I didn't make 5 YouTube videos this week. And like,
so true.
So I started having to prioritize like really rigorously what actually mattered. And this was a lesson that I learned from my partner, who had to do extensive therapy for dealing with anxiety, where you can almost like make these lists or categories. What do I need to get done in the next hour? What has to be done within a day? What has to be done within a week? What doesn't matter when it's done? And even just starting to prioritize things in that way freed me, like, not that I don't still struggle with this, but it freed me from the literally like deadlocking anxiety that would make it so that I was incapable of doing anything, because I'd start prioritizing and putting into these boxes like, will we be in trouble if I don't do this in an hour? Will we literally not eat if I don't get groceries tomorrow? Will we not, right? And when I started to actually try to create clarifying contexts for like the importance of certain things, even if my anxiety brain was telling me otherwise, I started to be able to counterbalance it. And one of the things in games, this will sound silly, that I started to realize was causing me bizarre undue anxiety for like no reason, because it was this one extra thing that I had to constantly maintain or do, or like if I was on stream, people would make fun of me for it, and like I felt bad that I didn't have the thing that I was trying to do. One of the things was my inventory, and I reached a certain point where I went, does this affect truly anyone other than me? Is it going to stop me from playing the game? Is it going to make it so that, like, yes, sometimes I'm going to have to do a weird little moment, but for me, the idea of cleaning up 5 things from my inventory to free up slots right then in the moment when it happened was far more doable for me than the weird anxiety lock that I would end up in when I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to log in, but when I log in, I have to take an hour and a half to clean my inventory and go to the bank and do the thing. And it's like, it's just a weird, silly part of my brain. But I decided, I was like, this is the dust in the corner. I do not have to worry about this. And that's where it went, and it has stayed there ever since. And that's why it's a disaster, truly and honestly. There's that.
I don't really know what to add to that. I kind of like that. Yeah, what is it? What is the actual... That's a good way of it. So you adjusted your kind of thinking there in a way that was really, really helpful. That's good. Like, how is it going to affect me? Is it going to affect, like, does it matter? Like, does it actually matter? Like, how, and then almost it sounds like you pulled that from real life and also to the gaming world. And it was like, you know, I started to organize my stuff here a little bit more differently. And that came into my inventory. Like, but it was like, okay, it's still messy, but it's not the end of the world. And I can still do the things I need to do within that. But it doesn't have to be perfect. And also that idea of what that perfect is someone else's idea. For me, this is perfect because this is how I manage it. And this is how I know where my shit is, you know? Like, I know my Evan Nash Blade coins are up there in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah, I totally know where everything is, for sure.
Sometimes, I mean, it depends. But like, you know, at least you know the area, I guess, the rough area a bit, or it's still there and you don't feel bad. Because I get this thing where I feel bad if I've gotten rid of something. Like, I'm going to regret it. So there's something that's there about, you know, getting rid of things and feeling guilt for getting rid of it. Like, there's something there about that for me. Yeah, it's just interesting. How about you for next? How do you feel about the whole? How's your inventory?
Depending on the day, it's a dumpster fire from hell or perfectly and utterly ordered to within an inch of its fucking life.
Well,
and you can catch me on either day.
Yeah, we've seen all your inventory. Actually sent us screenshots.
I thought it was a homework assignment. I'm like, oh, I'm going to send my screenshots so that he can show them.
Log into each account and
it was very good in all the MMOs. And
I want my fucking gold star. I want my fucking gold star.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So how is it? Is it good? Like, I'm not going to show it on stream, but is it good?
I'm very much with Rook. I had to stop caring. I have so executive function. ADHD is really weird, okay? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can be like on the ball so much and your focus is like, you're like a fucking god and you can just do it for hours. And then the next minute you're like wandering down the street, a butterfly walks past, 2 hours have suddenly evaporated and you don't know where. It's awful and funny. And I drive my husband insane with it. He can be literally talking to me and I'm just gone. I've just nebulized in front of him and he has to kind of like pantomime to get me to talk to him again. It's endlessly frustrating for him and he deserves a medal all by himself. But yeah, I don't know. I've decided I've got so much bandwidth of fucks to give. and I am giving no more of them to things that don't matter. What actually matters.
Here.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's probably yeah. Pick your battles, right? Pick your battles.
Pick your battles. That's actually a good one. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's it. Exactly. So people, when you start judging them on their inventory, just remember.
That's right. That's right.
I'm gonna take us on to not that
Just
anyone
remember,
would do
people
that.
are dying, Kim.
Yeah, there you go. What? Okay. I'm gonna.
The people who get it, and the people who don't.
Rick has already said that they're behind on their memes, and I am way behind on that one.
I'm pretty sure I got that. That's from Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Yes,
right?
yes, it is.
I don't know anything because I really don't like Kim Kardashian. I mean, they're awful. I'm sorry, they are terrible, but anyway. I'm going to show this. I can't remember whether or not this is going to make my point or not. This is actually, I'm just trying to make sure our windows are looking good. Sure we're looking good. There we go. Let's moved it over. If you have not followed the Situational Therapist on TikTok, they talk about many things which are awesome. Let me see if this is.
Times where they get to places in video games and they just stop. Like they can't get past it and they stop and they go look at tips online. They ask other people for
Who's
help.
got the worst? So I've still got my Onyxia scale cloak from Vanilla WoW in my bank. So I can't. So I think that I should win the whose inventory has the most useless crap. Okay.
Are you watching this? I was just showing the streamer video, by the way, and I didn't say that. That was just probably why I didn't get that. But I was like.
Fornax was like, there's this weird silence.
Yeah,
so I guess I'll just fill it with.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't say anything. I was just showing a video on TikTok, and it was talking about he's got control, and he's talking about. Actually, can't remember. I just completely lost it. But go and follow this person. It's the Situational Therapist. If you want to think about, like, they talk a lot about. I think they are still working out their place, and they're definitely talking out a lot into the void about how they use video games with adults specifically and like ADHD and other stuff, but they're really, really great. Anyway, we're not going to watch this massively long video because I just realized it's really long. I can't find the thing that I was trying to find, so ending that. But that's one person you should go over. If you wanted to think about video games and mental health, that's one person to follow for sure. There's loads of people who are great on TikTok. There's also people who talk about mental health on TikTok who are a little bit more out there, I would say, in the world of things, but they're fun, I guess.
I love TikTok.
I know you do. You enjoy it very much. Okay.
I love Frank Green on TikTok. He's hilarious. Yeah.
Huh.
I don't
Curious.
use TikTok.
Oh, I watch it when I go into the bathroom.
Like, if somebody sends me a funny TikTok, I'll watch it. I like to watch TikTok compilations on YouTube.
That's a good way of getting
That's
it
the same.
too.
I don't watch it a lot. I watch it for the mental health stuff. I follow 4 people. One of them is the guy who screams at stuff. Like, he's just like, he does the Autobot voice from Transformers, and he basically just does silly random stuff all the time. He's just like this American farmer, and he just runs around like it falls over stuff. I follow a couple of mental health people and the guy who does loads of voices from Elder Scrolls. That's it.
That one is good.
Like
that
5
one is
people.
good.
I've got like 5 people who follow. Anyway, I'll have to show you. I've shown him on stream quite a lot. Oh, and the Canadian guy who lives out in a swamp, who has a small little hut, and basically he starts off every single video. He's like, he's the best. He's so good. Like, for your mental health, he's like, hello buddy, how you doing? Let's sit down and play some Super Nintendo NHL 1993. And then like he gets like some pumpkin out and stuff, and he starts making this pie on a fire outside in the swamp. And I'm just like, man, I want to be there with him and his dog.
You did bring it back to mental health.
Yeah. It's all related.
Like, Fornax is like, burn down the government, and Jebro was like, let me tell you about this cute Canadian man I watched that hangs out in the woods. Like, and this is our mental health podcast. Yeah. Oh, here we
Both
are.
are cathartic in their
Both
own way.
cathartic.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I will play this at the end of the podcast for everyone. I will find him. What is his name actually? I can't remember. I'll find it. Thank you. Yes, it's a mental health. It is actually a mental health thing for me. To be fair, to be honest, I think the comedy is, and also calmingness, and there's definitely things in the game in Guild Wars 2 which do bring me calm. Like if I think about, there's one specific spot in the End of Dragons which is very, very nice, on the water where you can fish. I think I've talked about it before. It's where I've made a video for a hero point, and it's in the southwest side of the map on Echo Road Wilds, which we were talking about last week. And you go west and you go underground and you get the hero point, and then you go past there, and then it's just like this big massive circular stained glass window. It kind of looks like as if you were in the back of Big Ben for some reason, because it kind of looks like a clock. I said clock. It was just a very silent.
Not. You did not.
I said no. You go back.
No, you did not.
I know you are British, but baby, you did not say clock.
I did say clock at the first. I did, but it was very silent, and then I realised like that may have been. And then the other three people made it worse. So clip it. I bet you I said clock, but I didn't say clock. I went clock or something, and it sounded like another word, which is rude and naughty. So, no,
Many things look kind of like a cock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Racist against chickens now, don't you? Holy shitballs.
I don't think you can be racist against chickens. I think you can be chickenist, maybe. I think that's what that would be.
I'm sorry. So you, to be clear, you're being cockist.
Yes.
Cockist.
I guess so. No, what are you talking about? I've got nothing against. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I find calm in that. Thank you very much.
Tell us more about how you find it calming to go to a place that has a big cock in it. Clock in it in Guild Wars 2.
And the water there is very nice.
Yeah.
There is very nice. And it's a great place to hang out, and I go there sometimes. But there are situations and stuff in Guild Wars 2. And actually is a theory I have about PvP. I actually feel like, and this may sound very out there, but I actually feel like PvP Conquest and the community that, and I'm not saying everyone who plays PvP is awful, because that's part of my community, but the themes and attitudes and the way people talk to each other are very not ArenaNet. Like, they just not. And I feel like they have started to like get to a place where they've made it so automated that they just don't have that the people are just gonna leave it. And it's kind of just been left in the wind a bit. And actually, like, Guild Wars PvP probably is the place which stresses me out the most nowadays. And I don't play as much as I used to. And there is very much these other places in Guild Wars 2 where I don't feel that stress. Like PvE, chilling out on my own, exploring maps is like easily for me the most chill thing to do, and it's so good because I can, especially when it's. And I think this is actually the thing I like the most about MMORPGs, just in general. Exploration is massively chill for me. And I feel like it is for a lot of people. Like, especially when it's something new that you are uncovering all the time. Repetitiveness is okay, and there's a level of comfort in that. Like, you can do the thing, you can do the comfort, you can do the content, and you know you can do it and you can get through it all the time. Cool. Like raids and stuff if you're not learning. But I actually prefer the experience of learning and growing myself. So, and especially when I'm exploring places, because I'm like, ooh, this is a new map. Like, all these, and I'm very, very emotive on streams when I see something cool. And I don't really care what people think if I get excited about something. I've never given a fuck about that. Let's be honest. And that's where I find my chill, I think, a lot. And I think I do get a lot of joy in PvP though when I do pull off a game where I feel like I've been very effective in that game, in that competitiveness. But I do have a problem with getting a little bit mad at people who suck. And I'm genuinely just awful in that area. Like, I don't abuse people. I don't scream at them. I don't shout. I may say something on stream, but it's in the void of my safe space where people understand. I'm not horrible about people, but no, it's just frustration, and that's okay. So those are the kind of. So I'm just wondering, like, where does everyone kind of have their chill play? And I realized that we've been going for about 2.5 hours as well. So I'm kind of taking this to a more relaxed space away from politics and stuff, but like trying to think about our chill spaces in maybe Guild Wars 2 specifically. Where's your chill, or maybe where's your stress more?
Stress PvP, flat out. But I feel like you have to, when I go into PvP, I have to accept that mindset.
You
for
manage
myself
expectations.
To be yeah, I'm not going in there expecting dandelions and roses. I'm going in there not only to fight other people
awful,
digitally.
though? Isn't that terrible?
It's kind of what it kind of sucks to say, but it is almost expected human nature when you're in a competition standpoint.
Isn't that awful though?
It
sucks.
Yeah,
but you're right though. It is. It's like, it's not.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be good enough. It shouldn't be the way it is. But it's like, well, it's a competitive mode, and people are wankers sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, you
and
know,
I've
it's just the
developed
way it
pretty
is.
thick skin.
Yeah.
You know, never touch my body. You'll be like, oh. So I have a pretty thick skin, good backbone to go into competitive mode.
Rookery's
So people
wondering
start.
what we're talking about now.
My thick skin, Jebro. There's a lot of moisture here. It doesn't work.
That's true.
But I go in there with the expectation to fight back if I have to. So I think I'm also a person who's not easily, folded over. I tend to also have that fiery attitude when I'm being challenged in any capacity.
I'm learning a lot about each other today.
Yeah. So,
Jebro, get your mind off that clock tower. Get your mind. Not everything has to be a clock joke, okay? Come on, Jebro.
when I'm faced with a challenge, I like to tackle it. So, I never shy away from a challenge. So if I'm in PvP, it is unfortunate that it happens, but I think I'm always online, so I have expectations of what the internet is, okay, honey? So, yeah, I'm not surprised, and it doesn't really bother me anymore, but it's unfortunate, I guess.
But where's your chill place?
Oh, yeah, chill place. What?
Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna try and translate what I think just happened. There was a loud noise outside your window that sounded like a really loud fart.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was picked up. I did just blow one. I'm just kidding.
You were just like, oh yeah, my chill place.
No, I think someone's drilling
For a lot of us,
downstairs.
that is our chill place.
Yeah,
That's fine.
but
I'm talking about Guild Wars 2.
I think the go-to chill place is probably open world, but I also really like strike missions and raids. It's not necessarily super chill, but it's a place where I can like go and play the game with other people. I'm just like, the current way of balance is even actually last night I almost like hit a wall. It was just the constant back and forth of trying to organize a group into 2 subgroups. I don't know why, but last night I was like, I'm so tired of this.
Yeah.
But other than that, I have a really great time in PvE.
And is it the people, because you have a little crew of people that kind of you play with, and then you build up on that with LFG, right? Because you love
Sometimes when I'm streaming, if I'm not streaming, I like to practice what I preach. I've been trying to get into that habit. So I'll just like pop up an LFG and it's like End of Dragons Daily, looking for all/flex. And then people come in. But it's great that people have like the flexibility, but like the deluge of like, I can alack and heal, I can quickness and heal, I can do Connie, I can't do that. And it's like, I'm getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, so it can be a lot to organize. Okay, that's cool. There you go, some differences there. Thank you, Kroof. And it wouldn't be a normal Kroof comment without dab somewhere. Is that full dab or is that half dab?
That
was
I
kind
like
of like
this dab.
You didn't really. Oh, that's a dibble dabble dab.
That one's fun.
I'm calling that the dibble dabble dab. That's the very
That's its
English.
name.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Anywho. Back to Cox.
Oh my god, The Mental Health Podcast continues. Your chill place, Crichton Herald, in Guild Wars 2, and also maybe your stressful place in Guild Wars 2. Which stresses you out as well?
So, stress, I don't really, honestly, because I'm very curated with how I interface with the game, I don't have a lot of stress places in the game. I really don't.
Yeah. You curate your experience.
Yeah, I don't. If it would be like high-end organized raiding, that would be my stress place. Which used to be when I was younger, a younger gamer. My go-to place for fun because I like to organize, and I did a lot of raiding and raid leading in World of Warcraft. But yeah, I don't. I got a note from my mama. She says I don't have to do that anymore, so I don't do that. But in terms of like my happy place, I love the exploration in the game. I love the mount system. I love flying around on my griffin and just existing in these beautiful, expansive environments. I think a lot of games, for example, like World of Warcraft, which I played extensively until the studio set itself on fire. It had a habit of having high-end or max level end areas be dumpster fires from hell. Literally, they went to hell, this expansion in the Shadowlands, right? And I find my mental health is very affected by environment, both in-game and out of it. So I have to curate my environment. So I have my office, my gaming room where I do all my work. I'm surrounded by flowers and plants. It's an arboretum. If I took a picture, you'd think I was in the jungle of my desk, right? So I have to I need green spaces. I need bright spaces. I don't mind diversity, but oppressive, dark places really fuck with my head. So I don't like to spend too much time in them. So Guild Wars is fantastic because it's just even the high-end difficult zones, like the dragon maps that we have, they're beautiful. They're beautiful,
yeah,
and there's beautiful
good.
story. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so, Shadowlands must have messed with your head then pretty heavily. There's just darkness everywhere. Other than, some of them are okay. They're like.
So the last zone that they introduced, Ferris Mortis, is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so the zones, the content has to be engaging. So you can get me in a dark place if I have a compelling narrative to be there, if I have a reason to be there and I feel like I'm doing some good. And I think a lot of games, a lot of games outside the ones I play are just go in, you murder hobo time, right? You go in, you murder things, you loot their bodies, literally war crime people, and then you skip on your merry way, right? I mean, that's what it is, and that's the stereotypical gamer type that gets like touted as the subversive gamer. But when the vast majority of gaming is incredibly beautiful, incredibly story-driven, character-driven explorations of humanity and explorations of imagined worlds, which is what I love. And so that's my happy space. Leaving the crap of the reality behind, and just it's like disappearing into the pages of a good book. Apart from, it's not just like a passive experience. You are literally in a living, breathing world, right? And that's my happy space, to just escape the nonsense that I can't control into an environment which I have more control of.
Yeah. That's the one there, isn't it? The environment where I have more control of. That's a good way of putting it. It's true though. Because
very old.
Huh?
Very old, very wise.
Very old. Well, I mean, that makes sense though, because I think that's what we do, isn't it? Like when we feel out of control, that can bring up feelings of anxiety, depression, sadness, etc., etc., etc. Like we will say, negative feelings. I don't like saying feelings are never negative a lot of the time. But like, you know, we seek to gain control, and I think, you know, we can do that in healthy ways, or we can do that in very unhealthy ways, and like gaming is one of the more healthy ways. And obviously there, as I said at the beginning, there can be unhealthy gaming, as there can be unhealthy everything. And
I think you also have to forgive yourself as well. I mean, if you're having a really, really hard time in the world, and you decide to GTFO and go and play World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2 or Final Fantasy, you are not murdering kittens in a back alley.
No, yeah.
You are putting yourself in a safe space where you feel protected. You are protecting yourself. It's a protective measure. So don't beat yourself up because you're not out there saving the world or marching 17 times this week. Just Jesus Christ, just give yourself a break, you know.
This is true. The only time that becomes harmful is when that is the only thing you do, and that is the only thing you do to... For some people, that is the only thing they can do to feel some control, and I get that completely. But when it stops you from existing and being able to participate in the real world as well completely, like in any kind of way, and I know obviously people are stuck at home, people are stuck in places like, but like this is a form of getting out of that, like talking to other people, being communicative. You know, we are still partaking outside of that world as well. Like that's healthy, and we do have to do that sometimes. So
I mean, situation is entirely subjective, isn't it?
For sure. That's it, exactly. Yeah.
And you have to cut your cloth according to your means. If you have massive pressures as a parent, you can't just drop everything and just get out. You have to deal, but you have to allow yourself some time for your needs. It cannot just be everybody else all the time or everything else all the time. And the feeling, I think a lot of the time, I think why people are feeling just so desperate at the moment generally, and why gaming is so important as an outlet, is because we feel a tremendous lack of agency in the real world, a lack of our views not being reflected, ourselves not being reflected, the vilification of communities unjustly, and to try and just grab a bit of mental health back and recharge your resilience batteries. Gaming, media, films that can lift your spirit, it can give you enough energy to go back into the battle, as it were, back into the fight, back into the comment section, even if it's just like challenging one person kindly on their views. You never know, that might be the one time. Well, I mean, I have set people on fire in the comments section before, but it's a rare person who elicits that response in me. Yeah.
I do that all the time. I'm like, dude, this is my person. This is my space. Like, don't be rude to me. I do not abide rudeness. As soon as that happens, I'm done.
I've actually learned not to do that anymore. Not that I did it a lot, but I now go out of my way to actively like type something up and then immediately delete it.
Oh, I do that
and
all
it's
the time.
Very cathartic.
That I do. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I reply to people like in my head or on Twitter or in PvP. There's literally a PvP clip of me because I do this a lot. They hear me typing. I never send the message because I get it out. It's like a journal. So, okay, if you don't know this, like journaling is like a massive tool in counseling and like mental health to like channel feelings. It's like art therapy, right? Or any kind of creation. It's like it's like potentially gaming. I guess if you perform something, and you know, PvP I guess can be a way of getting out aggression, whatever. But like in terms of journaling, like you write something down. Especially if you've got intrusive thoughts that circle, you almost think of it like, I said this to a kid yesterday and I'm going to do it again. Imagine loads of airplanes going around like an airfield, right? And you've got traffic control. Those airplanes keep flying around and around and around your head, or in the air above traffic control. Those planes, at some point, there's going to be so many that they're just going to end up crashing into each other, and there's just going to be a fire in the sky, and it will be on the floor, and everything's going to go bad. You need a way to bring back down that plane and send it on its merry way, right? And then once that happens, the air around you is clear, and you can think, and you can exist, and there's peace and there's love and joy in the world. This is one of my examples I just randomly pulled out of the air yesterday. I loved it. I was just like, damn, that's actually not bad. Metaphor is so powerful. It really is. And it's like journaling, like you need an avenue for those thoughts, the circling, right? So when the chat, so that's how I use the chat, and that's how I use Twitter, and how I use other things when people, exactly what you said, Kroof, that's very good. But I actually sent the message once in PvP. And it was one of my clips on my channel, and it was just like, it was not good. It wasn't horrible. I wasn't being mean to anyone. I was like describing what should be happening on the map and like how we should be doing it, because I was like, I'm so frustrated right now. And then it clicked out. I can't remember. No, that's the damage clip. That's me being very blatant, like just speaking, I need more damage. Give me damage. That's very different, but like it's a good way of actually getting things out. And actually, I think that chats in Guild Wars 2 and other MMORPGs are full of. It can be really, really nice people wanting to help others, or you can just see like the abuse and awfulness that can come out into map chats and stuff. And PvP again is one of those areas which is not like really great for that, unfortunately. Because people think they're trolling, but then they forget that kids play this game, and the shit they talk about is just outright awful. And I'm just like, oh, good lord, how are these people still in this game? But anyway.
Can I ask you a question?
No.
As a counsellor?
Yes.
Okay, so... in terms of... Sorry, I'll take it down.
No, it's good. That's good timing.
In terms of curating your environment,
yeah,
a certain amount of curating is good, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're not surrounded by toxic people or a toxic environment, and you want to protect yourself.
Okay.
But when does that kind of inverse over into like creating a bubble around yourself, that you're protecting yourself from criticism that might be valid? Because in my comment section, unless they're telling me they're going to rape me, or they're sending me dick pics, or they're just being lewd, then I will leave that shit alone. And people will say stuff, and I'll my general comeback if they say something weird is, we see the world not how it is, but how we are. So if you think that my content is sexual, dude, that is on you. That's because I ain't putting that out here. This is PG, right?
So this isn't PG.
Yeah,
this is not PG.
My
you were talking about your on your YouTube.
Yeah, my content generally is content.
You were Southern then. I love it. Okay.
Sorry, my content.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I apologise. Sorry,
Southerner.
How
Apologise for
dare
going
you.
where I live. It's great there.
It is lovely. I lived in London for a while.
It's not lovely.
Where I lived was.
I loved London, where I lived too.
You lived in a very nice area. You did not live where I lived. It was not good.
I lived in Northwood, if you know where that is.
No.
Probably not. Okay, no, that's fine. So what do you recommend as a therapist or a therapist in training? What do you recommend?
First thing I will tell you is that, and any counsellor will say this, is that counsellors don't give advice. It's not part of what they do, unless they're like advice oriented, theory wise. I do a little bit of CBT, but I like to talk about and think about the past and the unconscious, which means CBT is a little bit out of my realm. Of the way I practice, but CBT is more effective with kids because they don't have much of a past, so it doesn't really work that well. But it's all about talk therapy and listening and supporting in that way. So therapy essentially is all about just that. But in terms of like your environment, I knew what you were going to say as you were saying it, and then you got there in the end, and I was like, okay, I think that's something that this is again a bigger conversation, and I think if I relate it to Guild Wars 2 and we can say the example of sticking to one thing like a game, like as the bubble, And this goes hand in hand with the conversation of using one thing specifically to deal and not going outside of that. We know that can be harmful. It stops us from functioning in a world where other points of view are also valid and also not valid, but like need to be heard, so we can grow as a person. And if we can become very stuck if we stick in a bubble. You know, think about what a bubble is. Okay, like a bubble is somewhere you don't really go outside. If you go outside, it pops, and then suddenly all of the world is available, and you will be overloaded. A bubble is a place which is safe, which is nice and cool, but at the same time, you know, you're not experiencing the rest of what life may have to offer. So it can be safe and awesome, but it's also it can be dangerous, and it can be what a lot of the, I would say in America, the right exists, and probably the left as well, exist within, so that we can't reach out to the other side, which is something you were talking about earlier, which goes way beyond probably what we should be talking about right now. But so it's difficult.
Protective but not limiting is the advice. Protective but not limiting.
Yeah, I think having a safe space is important, but I think, you know, we're all unique. I mean, as a person, I would like to talk about my own life experiences a lot. To kind of, rather than give advice as a counselor. I always say to a stream, I say, I am a trained counselor and I am a mental health professional. I just am. I should be saying that more honestly. But I will talk about from my personal experience. I take a lot of risks in life. And I always have, and I always will, because I want to grow and I want to experience new things. And that's how I like to live my life. Unfortunately, that means there are some negatives to that. You know, I don't maybe have stable relationships a lot of the time because I move a lot, which is why I find online communities wholesome and awesome, because no matter where I go in the world, it doesn't matter, they're still there. And that's just unfortunate. It's just the way it is, but that's the way I choose to live my life. I think because I realized that being in a bubble, maybe like certain people I've known in the past who have had depression, who have had suicidal tendencies, suicidal ideation, or anxiety and other things, that's really held them in place. And I've seen them stuck in that place for such a long time. And that's forced me to push myself out of that so I can feel better. But that doesn't mean that's not advice for people. That's me. In my unique situation. Bubbles are good for some people. They just are. They're healthy. If that bubble is more protective than their upbringing as a child and their attachment to their parents, if that was abusive and horrible and unsafe, and they're in this bubble which is protective and safe, and they've never had that before, fucking yes, have that. But like at some point in time, if we remove ourselves from these safe places, then we can't interact with the rest of the world, and I think that's when it can become detrimental at times. But that's my personal view. That's not necessarily a counselor view, because at the end of the day, I did ask an
impossible question. I asked you an impossible question to answer, because it's the topics we're talking about are 50,000 deep, and we're kind of skimming on the top of this iceberg.
It's always responding to the uniqueness of the people and remembering that every single person is unique and is different as well. Okay, all right, Kroof's got to eject themselves from our conversation.
Not yet. In a few though.
we've been talking for a while. But yeah, it's a good question to answer, and I would say that anyone that's listening, that piece was the Daniel Jebro piece and not the counselor piece, because that's advice that I probably wouldn't ever give someone advice unless they needed it or in a crisis, and unless it was something where, you know, what kind of interventions we could bring to something. So like an intervention would be, for example, some CBT exercises, breathing exercises, etc., etc.
Also, for everybody here, because there was a question in chat, I think it's worth saying CBT, meaning cognitive behavioral therapy.
That's it. Yeah. So there's cognitive behavioral therapy, and then there's behavioral therapy, which is very different. So there's thoughts, behavior theory, and then therapy, and then there's just behavioral stuff where you try to adjust behaviors specifically to initiate change. So it's very interesting. CBT came from behavioral therapy, which is a lot older. It's like, I'm learning a lot right now because I got exams. So if my knowledge just keeps coming out, that's why. But it's good that I'm remembering this shit. I actually can't proud of myself right now. But
I did want to say really fast that there were 3 things from the question because I hadn't followed up on that one yet. So what's your comfort place in games? I actually thought it was really interesting that all of us talked about exploration because that's a big one for me too. Like, I really love just exploring a world, like putting on a TV show, doing some kind of open world achievement, world completion, just going around trying to do all the quests that are in an area. I really love doing this kind of weird thing where I'll just like, I don't know, have music on or whatever, and I'll just go first person camera and try to do like really dramatic camera shots where I'm like, sometimes I'm recording for videos, but like more often than not, it's just that like I want a different perspective on the world and I want to feel something different about like the content, or like, so I'll just try to, get like that perfect shot. I'll take screenshots sometimes, but a lot of times it's just to like change how I'm moving through the world. And I find that really weirdly soothing. I don't know why. So I'll do that.
Absolutely. Oh, it's like photography, isn't it? I mean, you're doing like digital photography, really. I mean, that's, absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny for me too, because I think that I have found more and more, probably because of content creation, I guess, that because I'm on so much, right? I'm sharing so much of my journey with people. I'm talking all day, talking on podcasts. I do raid nights. I'm on comms. I'm talking to people from like morning to night. I found that I have really enjoyed just like not interacting with anyone in like hours.
You need that time.
Where it's just like, I will do something just by myself in game, and I'll find that really calming. In Guild Wars 2, I love all of the End of Dragon zones. I also, very weirdly, I like to just hang out in Arborstone, but I particularly like to hang out right next to one of the beautiful dragons there.
Oh, okay.
And yes, I do. I'll go hang out with my NPC because I think that sometimes, I think you'll probably relate to this, Jeb, that I don't always give myself worth as much credit as I should. So sometimes now I'll just go and stand there, and I am really moved by it. So there is that. But
with yourself.
Yeah, like with myself.
My video game self.
But yeah, I just find that kind of a calming area, and I really like dragons. So I just like looking at them. So I hang out with Suwan, or I hang out with oh my gosh, not Suwan. My brain is goofing right now. The Salt Spray Dragon, Kunavang. I hang out with Kunavang because I think she's beautiful and I really like her character model details. So I'll just go like sit there and look at her, and then I'm happy. Otherwise, weirdly enough, I'm gonna add something in because there was one thing I wanted to talk about that I don't think we brought up in relation to PvP. I do find pugging in raid situations, particularly in 14, to be one of the most stressful things for me. However, certain PvP game modes, although they have the possibility of tipping me over into like, I am too into this and I'm angry and like I like can tell that my mood has tanked because of whatever thing, there are also some times where I think I spend so much of my time curating myself in a way when I'm talking to people or I'm on podcasts, whether it's trying to be professional, whether it's trying to like play off of everybody else's energy, whether it's trying to like make the best experience and pay attention to what's happening in chat, whether it's being that listening ear for friends or other people, that I actually do sometimes go into PvP modes to blow off steam. Most recently, my addiction to Final Fantasy XIV's Crystalline Conflict, I go in alone. I do not have my microphone on. You can't even talk in the chat in 14's PvP. And I will sit in here and just yell obscenities at my computer. Like things that you would never hear me say. I would never say to a real person. I would never like ever put that burden on somebody.
I need this video. Just for my own personal content, can you make
Patreon
a Patreon
exclusive?
Yeah, a Patreon exclusive. Rook goes ham in PvP. Just audio. Literally just audio. I would pay for that monthly. I'm not even joking. That is worth more than Netflix. I would do it. I'm telling you, chat. would you pay $5 a month to hear Rook like literally go off the wall, like just nuts in PvP for like an hour and a half every like episodes? It could be every game. Like, you could have like 4 games a month. That's worth it.
I do find it cathartic.
Wow.
I don't know what it is. Like I guess it is just because I try very hard to be a force of kindness, you know, like.
No, I'm not laughing at you, kindness. Sorry.
No, I know. So actually, it's really cathartic sometimes just to go into ranked PvP, and it has to be like a really specific kind of PvP. The only games that I've ever found this in were Overwatch, competitive Overwatch, and this new Crystalline Conflict mode in 14. And for some reason, I really like those. I really like when they have the unique classes, characters, the team play, like the strong focus on team play. But I don't like going in as a team, and I just like going alone. And again, no one will ever hear this unless we have a new Patreon tier, but I will just like, I'll let loose on every person that I'm in the team with. Bebop will be in the other room and just hear me over here like yelling like, "Are you here as a DPS? Because you're doing anything but!" Like, and I'll just like scream. Like,
damn! Oh my God, I do that on stream.
Damn! Are you DPS because you're doing anything but?
I mean, I say that a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's just because that's the thing. That's great content right there.
Yeah,
that's great content,
but yeah, I find that liberating in a sense. That, and also just like there are times where I just need to like vent, and this isn't necessarily game specific, but like I am that kind of person where like I have a strong amount of self-control usually in all situations. Yeah. It takes a lot to truly make me like lose it on someone. Like I have to be in a really bad place, you know what I mean? Like, and I have to be really frustrated and really tired. Like, but when it is again out of the context of like actually facing somebody that would have emotional impact, I oftentimes have to just vent. And so like I will just like monologue, you know, I'll be frustrated about something and I'll go and I'll monologue about it or I'll whatever. And like sometimes there are things where like in games like that PvP mode, right, where I get that same sense of catharsis where nobody has to be affected, nobody has to be impacted, like you were talking about with journaling. But that part of myself that I know I'm like, I cannot responsibly show this to the world, like that would be terrible and I'd never want to be this person, like, but sometimes you have to like let those things out or they will come out, right? Or like you will misdirect your anger and frustration. So
yes, projection is a big thing, especially, and displacement of emotions and stuff. Displacement is a big phrase, you know, within theory, and like displacing your feelings, you know, elsewhere. Like you say, it was a very, very good point. Like you can put those. You might be angry at someone else, and then could go on to all the things. I'm very conscious that Crew has to go, so I want to make sure that we end the things. But yes, very good points, and thank you. And also looking forward to that Patreon tier very soon.
I'm very excited to see the flames.
Yeah. Just to hear them. I mean, I think you should have 2 cameras, one on you and then one on Bebop, like just their reactions to you, and or the audio.
It's like a blank stare.
I think so. Like, or like maybe they're throwing stuff at you. I don't know. But like, I feel like that would be quality content right there. Not that you don't do quality content already.
Thanks, Dad.
But it's just an addition.
No, I agree. It would be way more quality if I did that. I agree. Than the garbage that I peddle usually.
Yes.
So
Awful.
yeah.
No, so bad.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. Long ago, those shots were fired. Anyway, I hope everyone has. Kriv, do you just have to go?
Yeah. Why are you leaving us?
Do you have to literally zip, like you have to go right this second, or have you got time for an outro?
Oh, I have time for an outro. Yeah, 15 minutes would have been 3:40 something, so I have a couple minutes.
Okay. That's a lot of pressure. 3:40 something for an outro? Like the shortest outro I've done is like 50 minutes.
15 minutes, yeah. Oh, I don't know if we're gonna make it.
50. Okay, thanks so much for watching this podcast. Goodbye and see you next time.
Period.
Cool, did it. Nailed it. Great job, everybody.
Chris, tell us what you do, where you do it, and thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kroof. I've entered my bowl cut era, so I will be unstoppable. I'm going to wreak a lot of havoc on the internet, and I hope you are all prepared. Thank you so much for having me on. This was lovely to hear everyone discuss the various topics. It was really, really brilliant, as the Brits say. And you can find me on YouTube at Kroof and on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram also, and TikTok. So thank you so much for having me on. Bye-bye!
You're a ridiculous person. Thank you for your insight and awesomeness as ever, and your increasingly awesome hairstyles. What else would we like to do? There's other people. There's Rookery as well. Says what you do when you do it, and about the new Patreon tier.
Yeah. So yes, you'll be able to catch me raging soon on Patreon. I look forward to the support. Thank you all. No, really, thank you all. You've heard me talk about this on the podcast. You know who I am. I'm Rookery, ROOKURI. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube at the same. I'm usually live 2 to 3 days a week on my own channel. I try to get at least one video up on YouTube per week. And then we also do podcasts, usually Fridays, Saturdays, and shoutcasting like we were talking about earlier. So I've been doing a lot of other appearances elsewhere. So be sure to check that out if you're curious, because even if it says I'm only live like 2 days on Twitch, it's very likely that I'm doing a lot more than that in other places. And I try to let people know where those are going to be. On Twitter, you can find me at Rookery_. And yeah, I hope I'm really looking forward to the Halloween event this year, because I have climbed the Mad King's clock tower before. I'm sorry. Clock tower before, but I think that this year it's going to be really special. So I know it's a few months away, and this is a little bit ahead of the curve, but I hope you'll all tune in when we do it, because I think Jebro in particular is really going to find his happy place. So I hope you all enjoy. But really, on a more serious note, thank you for the conversation today, everybody. I appreciate everybody sharing and opening up. Talking about mental health is always a big sprawling thing, and to get to share any of who I am with all of you, it means a lot to get to do that and to have people listen. And it also means a lot to hear from all of you, your experiences, and get to take away from that and learn more about this world and wonderful people and passionate people that are in it. So thank you very much. It was a good one.
Okay, awesome. We're going to be doing more of it. We've got 3 more shows. Actually, there's going to be one show I can't do. The Herald, Fornax, and thank you for that as well, Rookery. Tell us what you do, where you do it, and will you have a new Patreon too?
I do have a Patreon.
You have one as well. Cool.
I have a Patreon, yes, yeah. Like, people give me money, and I make videos. That's what happens there. It's not like an OnlyFans or anything like that. It's not like that. Okay. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank you for inviting me to come on and talk about mental health. It's something that I struggle with, and I appreciate that more light is being shone onto it. Thank you, Rookery, for sharing your life. It's deeply impactful, and I hope that you know that you help more people than you see. And thank you.
Don't make me cry at the end.
Oh, sorry.
Make everyone cry. Don't be sorry.
Okay. You're beautiful. You're
tears.
wonderful. Thank you. That's really sweet. You're a wonderful human being, and I love having you on here, and I love the conversation and questions that you ask, because no matter what, I always think they are so thought-provoking, and it is really special to get to hear your story. And I'm just always cheering you on. I'm always cheering. I just wanted to say that. I mean, like, mental health is a journey for all of us, and thank you for being here and sharing those vulnerable things too, and for your words. It's very sweet.
I honestly, I haven't shared as much as I'm going to when we're talking about the disability, because I think it all links in. And I also want to thank Kroof for being their wonderful self.
Oh, you could.
It's not an episode if I don't misgender you at least twice. So still be in the comments.
I use all. You're good. It's fine.
And I love your hair, dear. You look beautiful. If you would like to see my crappy content, it's on YouTube, and oh God, I'm even on the cesspools of Facebook as well. So if you Crichton Herald everywhere and have fun, that's me.
That's me. The cheeky little smile coming up on your avatar is still amazing. Okay, then that is going to be the end of the show. Thank you so much as well for everyone that has been on the show. I thank you very much for being vulnerable, for being awesome and sharing things about yourself. I know, like, people do not have to. That's not something I ask people to do when they come on the podcast. This is up to them. As I've said many times, I do not do therapy on the stream. I do not do therapy within the scope of Twitch. It would not be ethical, and you can report me if that ever happens. I will be fine with that, because that is not something I should be doing. And yeah, find me in all the places: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I've got a TikTok as well. It's mostly clips from Twitch, but sometimes I put my takes on there as well about stuff. I did a bit of a rant about exams and how I think they're the fucking worst, as an example, and how they make people feel. And there will be more mental health stuff in there in the future once I've become a little bit more confident about putting myself out there as a professional and with opinions that matter. Like, that's just my own thing. And yeah, I just really glad that we can do this podcast. I really wanted to do something this month. Raising money is difficult this month for me, because my presence is not, my focus is on school, and I really want to put my full force into making, doing something for charity for mental health. So it might be later this year. Well, please, if you have any spare cash or anything, and you can donate some money, there's loads of great places you can do that. Trevor Project, Take This org, mental health crisis lines, loads of places to help loads of many different people. So please, if you know links, I post them in the comments to this as well, muchly appreciated. Also, link in the chat, I might put that as well in the description. ! Mental Health Month will be on the whole month, and it's links to Seize the Awkward stuff. We didn't get to talk about that much, and also resources from Take This for crisis, and just mental health resources, stuff which is fun to look at, and maybe you can deliver these things to folks you know who might be struggling. And I'm going to go now. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. And thank you for talking about something which is not easy to talk about. And thank you for chat as well, for being here the whole time and listening, because that's not easy to do either. But yeah, talk about it, do the things, and we'll see you next time. Take care. This was the LightBringers podcast. I'm trying to find music to play on the way out. Enjoy your face.